Council meeting, Tuesday, May the 4th. We will first, as always, we will ask Chandra to give roll call, please.
Sure. Okay, Mayor Klopp,
Present.
Deputy Mayor Ferguson,
Present.
Councillor Becker,
Present.
Councillor Harris,
Present.
Councillor Irvin,
Present.
Councillor Laporte,
Present.
Councillor Vandenberg,
Present.
Councillor Walden,
Present.
and Councillor Whetstone.
Present.
Okay, we have a full slate. Thank you. And so we're good to go. At this time, is there a disclosure of pecuniary interest for this meeting? Hearing none. I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder of approval of agenda, and just full disclosure, I'd like to make some opening remarks before we start, if that's okay with council. So I guess I should add that as an amendment to the agenda. So can is there a mover and a seconder with the amendment?
So moved.
Seconded, Councillor Walden.
Councillor Walden. All those in favor of approval agenda with amendment?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I have a request to make an adjustment to the agenda.
Okay, go ahead.
At 6.1.1,
Yeah.
that prior to number 9, we go in camera.
For prior to number 9, where is number 9? Sorry, can someone help me out?
6.1.1,
Okay, on my sheet, on my sheet, I go to, I just have 6.11, and then I go to 7 for confirmatory bylaws. So help me out, Chandra.
Councillor Irvin, are you referring to one of the recommendations in the report?
yes.
Okay,
Number 9,
number 9. Okay, sorry, that's where we lose a little bit here when we're zooming. So number 9,
prior to number 9, we go in camera.
and for why
Well,
reason?
because the in camera deals with number 9.
Oh, we're gonna go in camera first. That's what that's about. 4.1. Okay, Councillor?
Oh, I was not aware. Thank you.
Oh, no, that's why we have the approval of agenda. So we can have the discussions like this. No problem. Okay, so then you're withdrawing? Is that okay?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder for approval of the agenda as amended, with the mayor making some open remarks. I'm going to call the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Well, I just want to say good evening to everyone, to the staff, to BM Ross, to Ron Cowdice, and to the ratepayers, residents of Blue Water in the gallery. I thought we should maybe have a little brief history of where we've come and how we arrived here tonight. So starting off, I guess, after the initial shock of COVID-19, your council was resolved that we would not be paralyzed and stand still, that we were going to get on with the business of council. Bayfield Main Street Revitalization Project is one of those projects and jobs of council. With the help of the municipal staff and the assistance of BM Ross and Ron Cowdice, they have worked very hard to develop a plan that will revitalize and solve some problems that exist, such as drainage, and address the needs for improvements of accessibility and inclusiveness. In order for this project to come to this point, funds have been budgeted or reallocated as follows. The federal gas tax funds from all Canadians, including us, and the earned interest from 2018 to 2020 in the amount of $1,022,381.52. And credit to the previous council, we had a major bridge that we needed to be done, and they realized it was going to be needed to have money started to be set aside. So they put on a levy And over the years, that money had accumulated to the sum of $417,483 that we do not have to need for the project. Credit to our provincial and federal taxpayers, because we asked for funding, and we don't hear this very often, but they actually came through with what we requested. So that is where that comes from. And then also credit to the council 6 years ago, and with regards to the Bayfield Main Street, they realized we needed to start a fund there, and started collecting, and that sum is now at $510,000. So that's where we arrived at the funds for this project. There is a saying, if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. It has taken some time, but with the important input from our citizens, as well as that of the Heritage Advisory Committee and the Huron County Accessibility Committee, we have a plan before us here this evening. Councillors, I believe that we have enough information here that we can, by motion of council, give direction on what I see as the three main areas of the Bayfield Main Street. And in no particular order: the drainage work required, a financial decision on the hydro, and a street landscape design. I look forward to the discussion, councillors. And on that note, and as part of the gathering information tonight, we have to go, I believe we have to go in closed session to talk to your solicitor. So could I have a motion of a council to do that at this time? And just before we do that, I want to inform everyone that is listening in. When we get back, we will be going to 5 and 5.1, the delegations for the Bayfield Main Street Revitalization Project presentation by Kelly Vader, Dale Earl, and Ron Cowdice. So on that, could I have a motion from a councillor and a seconder, please, that we move into closed session?
Laporte will move.
Laporte, thank you. Seconder?
Second it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Chandra, take us to that special place, I guess. Here we go. Thank you.
I may turn my camera off till they all come back, I think.
A little slower on the way back. Chandra, I will leave it to you to confirm that we have the counselors all back.
It looks like they're all back.
Thank you. Okay, then, as said, there is no, we're now going to move to delegations and presentations, and 5.1, and Kelly, Dale, and Ron Caudice, please take it, proceed. Thank you.
Everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
Lori, were you planning to make any opening remarks?
No, I wasn't at this time.
Okay,
I-
no,
I
that's
think-
fine. I wasn't sure if you were going to, so that's fine. We'll just get right into the presentation then.
Thank you.
So the agenda for tonight is to, initially, we're going to review the summary of feedback from the last public meeting in March. Then we're going to go over the different design components and discuss the changes that we're suggesting to those different components based on the feedback received. We're going to talk about the revised hydro cost estimate and provide a few details about what would be involved if a decision is made to proceed with burying the hydro. Then Ron will go over some visual renderings that they've come up with of the different design details. And then we'll go through the different recommendations for the different design components and then discuss next steps briefly. So I think we're all familiar with the project study area. And before I get into the details of the feedback received, I think you've all seen the summary documents that have been produced. I just want to acknowledge that I've tried to reflect sort of what the general comments were. Obviously, it's not going to be representative of everybody who commented because we had a real disparity, but I've tried to present what sort of the general tone was from a majority of people who provided feedback. So initially from, in regards to drainage, there appeared to be a general acknowledgement from most of the people commenting that there was an issue with drainage in the downtown that needed to be resolved. And that was one of the key concerns. We had quite a few comments about street width, and there was a general concern over narrowing of the existing street. Some of the concerns that were expressed were in regards to safety for cyclists and room for delivery vehicles, which currently stop in the middle of the street to unload. In regard to sidewalks, generally most of the people were accepting of the compromise presented by exposed aggregate sidewalks that was presented at the meeting. And with lighting, also we had general support for the proposed 2-zone lighting plan, where you have a different set of lights that would highlight the pedestrian zone and higher lights that would be used on the street. The placemat concept we had a lot of people concerned with the design with that design component and a desire to remove that from the design and to generally minimize that component. In regards to parking spaces, there was a concern over a potential reduction in the number of parking spaces that were presented by the proposed design. There was very little support for crosswalks. I don't think, other than the accessibility committee, very few people indicated that they wanted designated crosswalks. Infiltration basins. A number of people were acknowledged that there was a need to address water quality in the stormwater runoff, but there was a concern that infiltration basins needed to be downsized to allow for the wider street and more parking. They didn't want the infiltration basins to reduce the number of parking spaces or be a cause for narrowing the road. And pretty much everybody wanted more tree cover. That was pretty much consistent throughout all the comments. In regards to seating, generally people were supportive of having a variety of seating options. A number of people asked if materials other than steel could be used because there was concern with steel being really warm and hot to sit on in the summertime. Bump outs, there was a concern over the maintenance along the street with bump outs, a loss of parking spaces due to them, and encroachment into the street width. With hydro, majority of people who commented supported burying the hydro wires at this time. And in regards to project extents, we had the two areas. One was at the north end by beyond Catherine. And there were a number of individuals who expressed concern over extending beyond the virtual high school and encroaching into that sort of traditional residential zone. And then at the end by Charles, which is the would be the south extent of Charles, there was concerns expressed about the lack of connectivity with the main street if sidewalks were not extended down Charles. So now I'm going to hand it over to Ron, and he's going to go over some of the design modifications that we're proposing based on that feedback that was received at the last public meeting.
Thanks, Kelly. There was a number of comments made over the public meetings that we've had about exploring different pavement options, and we did undertake a fairly extensive review of the different types of materials suggested, including looking at stabilized gravel as an option. We spoke to the manufacturers and suppliers of that product and compared the application of that with the OABA accessibility requirements and found that it just didn't meet those requirements. So we looked at interlocking paving stone, plain concrete, but generally we felt that exposed aggregate would be a good compromise. It has that sort of gravelly kind of look, especially if we're using a finer texture material so that it isn't ripply and it's not slippery. The illustration shows a curved sidewalk. Most of the sidewalks that we're talking about in the Bayfield downtown are straighter than what this is suggesting. Again, it's an AODA requirement to keep them fairly straight for the visually challenged people. But the example I could find that showed the exposed aggregate most clearly happened to be a curved sidewalk. We do have some illustrations at the end of the presentation that I can show you that I think captures the character more effectively. We did look at permeable options as well, but again, because of maintenance concerns and accessibility, they were not followed up on. And the installation method that we'll be detailing, because when talking about exposed aggregate, it's the revealing of the aggregate in the concrete mass itself and the surface that gives it that sort of unique character. But the type of aggregate used has a large impact on how smooth or how rough the surface is, and as I mentioned earlier, how slippery it becomes. And we also have the option of tinting. So tinting the concrete will also affect the overall color character. So that is something that we'll be very careful about in the detailing of the product for final installation.
Okay.
I don't know if you recall one of my early presentations when we were first looking at Bayfield's downtown. I talked a lot about the unique character of the downtown and how important it was to preserve that. And one of the ideas we came up with to reinforce that uniqueness was to create entrance solutions unique to each building that carried the building materials that we see in these in beautiful structures downtown into the landscape as we call them welcome mats. at the time. And so each store would have a custom designed space unique to its architecture and character. We didn't get strong support for that idea. And so in response to that, we've abandoned that approach and instead have pursued a much simpler solution that uses the two materials that we're promoting, which is plain concrete for the curbs and gutters and such, and the exposed aggregate. And one of the ideas that we're illustrating today, just as a suggestion, was that in front of the various stores where we connect to the buildings, we can provide cues to people passing through that this is where you turn, this is where the store entrance is, by contrasting the two materials. And we could use exposed aggregate as the field and just border the outside with smooth concrete, or in reverse. And some of the illustrations you'll see show that, or we could just leave it all in exposed aggregate. We thought we'd present some different options today. In terms of best practices from an accessibility point of view, having contrasting materials is preferred, but it's not required under the AODA. It's really a best practice approach. The gathering areas that you'll see are basically representative of those spaces that are already either paved in some fashion or gravel material. So we look really carefully at the downtown and try to minimize the amount of hard surface and maximize the amount of area allowed for landscape and tree planting by really having regard for the existing use patterns and where things are worn out and where people are already gathering, and then rather than leaving it in muddy dirt or unresolved, we've provided paving in those areas. And so there are gathering locations we've identified as a result that are in conjunction with business entrances. Largely, people come out of the store, or they gather in front of the store, and we've provided for space for that to happen. These designs were all presented to the property owners, the business owners in the downtown, and we have very strong support for the ideas that were presented. So we showed each individual what was proposed in front of their property, and then made adjustments and resolved any concerns that they had with the design solution.
Are you okay to move on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Lighting, Kelly talked about this. It's a 2-zone lighting. We were able to find a pedestrian accent lighting that's very similar to the street lights that are there now, the heritage lights. And although they are not LED and high efficiency, so they wouldn't be suitable for street lighting. So we found a very compatible light with a similar sort of character that does meet those requirements. We're showing them in black, and in the illustrations you see them in black. Some people had commented, wouldn't it be nice to do them in green, in the heritage green? And that is an option that we can explore. The crosswalks have been removed from the drawing, and we're looking at a variety of seating options, as Kelly suggested, using different materials. With COVID, we've been using a lot of individual seating, like Adirondack chairs. Interesting to see that many of those seating forms are already used downtown. Lots of stores have put those types of chairs outside, and people can sit separately and socially distance if required. But we can, with a let's say an elderly person, they prefer benches with backs and arms to assist in getting up and down, where there are bariatric options as well for people who are obese and have difficulty sitting on a chair with a back. So in order to accommodate a wide range of people, we're suggesting a wide range of furniture be used in the downtown. Whether it's inside the tender or outside the tender, that's to be determined. We as a suggestion, we might carry it in the tender as a provisional item and just see what it costs, and then council can make a decision whether it's something that they'd want to implement at this stage or whether it's something that could unfold down the road.
Okay, so this is me. So we had asked for clarification on the project extents, and this was just so that when we were doing the cost estimate that we understood exactly how far the project went. And so adjacent to Catherine Street at the west end, we did have a number of residents who either live or work in the area express some concern over extending the street and the sidewalks beyond the west end of the virtual high school. So we're recommending that would be where the project would stop. So sidewalk would run in front of the Pink Flamingo and the virtual high school, but it would stop there at that sort of just beyond the buildings. And then at Charles Street, as a compromise, because we did have some concern over a lack of connectivity with Main Street if the sidewalks weren't extended sort of around the corner, what we're suggesting to save money would be not to reconstruct the street there, but to only reconstruct the sidewalks. And so the intent would be, if possible, if there's room with the existing parking, we would go with 2.2 meter wide sidewalks, which is the width that's proposed for the rest of Main Street. But if we can't fit in 2.2 meter, because we're not reconstructing the road, we can't adjust the parking, we would just put as wide a sidewalk as possible. And again, it would just extend in front of the existing buildings to provide that connectivity for the businesses that are already along there. The other component here, we had proposed to put an additional accessible parking space on the corner of Charles and Main. This would be right in front of the plaza where Archie's is currently. So we're suggesting that would still be permitted. So that one parking space would need to be paved, and then we would provide a connection to the sidewalk, so handicapped individuals would be able to use that spot and then get onto the paved sidewalk from that location. Okay. I think this is Dale.
Yes, that's right. Yep. Thanks, Kelly.
Okay.
So just as a reminder to council, the overall intent of the infiltration basins along the corridor is to provide filtering of the runoff from the road and the boulevard. The role of the basin is it captures the first portion of the runoff during the rainfall event, which is the period the majority of the grit and oils tend to get washed off of those hard surfaces. In the event that runoff is too much for the basins to handle, basically the excess, it's directed downstream to the storm sewer system and then out to the lake. And we don't get too excited about the overflow that occurs because, like I said, the majority of the contaminants that come off the roadway are in kind of that first hit of rain that produces the first runoff. So with that said, are they providing some benefit? Definitely. But we did receive a number of comments about the size and quantity of the infiltration basins, primarily as it relates to the availability of parking and how it may impact the number. So in recognition of that, the team, we kind of put our heads together and took a look at the various locations of the basins. We did reduce the size as much as we thought we could for most of the basins, while still maintaining the water quality of the storm discharge that eventually hits the lake. For parking spaces, and I've noted this in the past, it's difficult to likely agree on the total amount of existing parking spaces that are out there right now because they're really not clearly defined. With that said, if we assume a standard width of parking stall over the area that's available for parking, we estimate there's about 150 spots, maybe 153 if you really squeeze things in together. And that includes a spot that's designated for accessible parking as well. So if we go back to the original concept for Main Street that we started out with back in the fall, we were providing probably about 140 fully defined spaces with about 3 accessible spots. So in hearing the public feedback and the emphasis on trying to maintain the number of parking locations along Main Street as much as possible, We did go back and made some modifications to the overall design. The one thing is the infiltration basins, like I said. The other thing is reducing the number of bump outs to create some more parking spaces. So through those updates and given the concept that we have right now, there's now about 145 spots plus 3 accessible spots, which at the end of the day, depending on what existing number you want to use, results in about a net reduction of between 2 and 5 parking spots in total. So it gets us pretty close to where we're at right now, but we can't quite meet it. Next slide, Kelly. So through the process, we did receive feedback from the public noting, I guess, opposition to the use of curbs, in particular the high back curbing within the corridor. We can tell you that the use of curbing, in our opinion, is an integral part of the drainage improvements along the corridor. For an urban setting, the curbing goes hand in hand with the control of drainage, as the curb provides that open conduit to direct surface water and the runoff that's collected off the roadway and boulevard. So, additionally to just the drainage aspect, curbing's used to better accommodate the grading of boulevards. It provides protection to the root structure of the tree canopy, and it provides a visible and permanent barrier between vehicles and pedestrians. So with that said, and in response to that feedback, we're going to make every effort in the final design to minimize the use of barrier curb with the focus on the drive over or dropped curbing wherever we can accommodate that. Additionally, we're proposing to add a tinted concrete for the use of the curb, which isn't normal. I don't think we've ever done it as a company, but there's no reason why you can't. And what that'll do is provide less contrast than what you would see with normal untinted concrete. Next slide. So that takes us to the discussion about pavement width. So the current width of Bayfield Main Street, it's not completely consistent and varies from block to block somewhat, but overall, the width of the asphalt surface is about 10 meters, which is over 30 feet, 32 feet, I think. And back when the initial design concept was prepared, we struck a width closer to the municipal standard and what we considered to be more reflective of a conventional roadway for an urban setting. So the thinking at that time was that by decreasing the road width, the boulevards could then be expanded to allow a larger area for pedestrians and tree plantings and landscapings. With that said, there's been some, I guess, preference from the comments that we received from the public that they like the width that's there now. And the majority of the feedback received favors that wider platform. And again, to support the delivery vehicles and to maintain the character of the large open roadway that exists there now. So with that said, we did take a look at available alternatives, keeping in mind that there are a few things that we're trying to balance off when we're doing this, and namely that's the width of the road, the maintenance of the pedestrian corridor, and the desire to maintain a tree canopy along that corridor. So given those factors, we were able to land at a road width of about 9 meters, and that's measured from the edge of curb to edge of curb. That will provide you with a balance that's being sought between the road width and the appropriate space allocated within the boulevard for a healthy tree canopy as well as pedestrian movements. If we consider the overall width of the gutters, if we take that into account into that 9 meter measurement, we're getting very close to that 10 meter overall width that exists there now, actually 9.9 meters in total. Next one. Oh, okay.
So these are the drawings. Ron,
Right.
are you going to just go over these in some detail?
No, just quickly, people have had a chance to review these already. These reflect the modifications that we've been talking about. And of course, the issue of trees has been paramount. And I wanted to point out that we're able to preserve the majority of the trees in the corridor. We do lose a few that are in poor condition already, and a couple as a result of underground utility requirements. But the dark green circles that you see there are the new trees, and we have a little over 30, 31 or 32
These
new
here,
trees. Sorry?
can you guys see my pointer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are the new trees that we placed. Some of them, and the ones that Kelly was just pointing to, are placed adjacent to or in the bump outs. And that's a point that Dale made earlier, that by using the bump outs in areas that would normally be lined off for safety reasons so that cars merging have a proper sight line, we've captured those, and rather than spray painting lines on the ground or painting lines, we've captured those as part of the rooting volume for the trees. A tree to grow properly needs in the order of 300 or more cubic feet of soil. And by working with that calculation, we've provided zones for the healthy growth of trees.
Okay, on to the next one.
Yes, please. And this is the area up near the Black Dog and Albion there, and the intersection. You can see the crosswalks have been deleted, and lots more. This area is a bit devoid of trees. We had a hard time getting them on the Black Dog side because it's so tight there. But on the other side, we've really beefed up the number of trees that people would see as they enter the downtown.
Okay. Dale, were you going to speak to the cross sections?
Yep, I'll speak to them. So the next few slides, we provide some cross sections and hopefully provide a visual of the lane width options that we looked at. We're hoping that the cross sections help to illustrate how the wider road impacts the available boulevard space for landscaping, tree canopy, infrastructure associated with buried hydro. In the cross section on the screen there, that's up at the Little Inn. And we've only showed half the roadway, really just for clarity. The top section, that's representative of that original design that we started with back in the fall, which was the narrower 8-meter wide asphalt width. The bottom section, that has the 10-meter wide asphalt width, and what it looks like in cross section. And then the middle is kind of the spot where we're landing at a 9-meter wide road width. As you move down through the sections, you get a better idea of how the tree canopy is impacted as you increase the width of the asphalt on Main Street. So by the time you hit that bottom section, which is the wider asphalt, the full 10-meter width, plus the curb on top of that, so that would push it to 11-meter width almost. You reduce the amount of space for both trees and other potential features like hydro transformers in that, I guess, that zone that you need for proper canopy growth. And again, the middle section, which is what we're suggesting as a compromise, it can provide that balance that we need between the overall width of the road and the space required for the tree canopy, while providing the room in the roadway for both cyclists and motorists. So out of interest, that 9-meter wide roadway can accommodate 2 full lanes of traffic plus a delivery vehicle, similar to what's there now in the middle of the road, if that is something that that businesses need to receive goods. So next section. So this one's done down at the Albion. And we've drawn a few sections as well to help illustrate the impact of the various asphalt widths here. At the Albion, we don't necessarily have that tree canopy issue, as Ron mentioned, because we really don't have the boulevard real estate that we do elsewhere along the corridor, but there's limitations nonetheless on space available for pedestrian travel in front of the inn and the restaurant. And in this instance, the 9-meter wide asphalt width allows for that, again, a balance between the road and the boulevard path of travel. Next, Kelly. Oh, is this me again?
Yep.
Okay. So that takes us to hydro. So one of the bigger, I don't know if I should say bigger, but one of the unresolved matters associated with the project relates to the burying of hydro. and the conductor associated with that along Main Street, basically from Clan Gregor up to Catherine. So in order to provide council with the most information we can, the team has met with Hydro a number of times to better understand the scope of work that will be required to fully bury the hydro service. And there's basically two critical path items associated with the hydro installation, including the civil component. And that would be work that would be done by the municipality's contractor. And then the Hydro One component, which is the work that only Hydro One can do. And what that portion is that Hydro One would be responsible for is basically the removal of the above ground wires, of course, and the poles, the installation of new wire conductor and conduits. And these conduits would be supplied by or installed by the municipality in their contractor. And I'll speak to that in the next slide. And then Hydro would also be responsible, of course, for the installation and connection of any new pad mount transformers or kiosks that they would need to design and include in their new system. And then connections and new meter bases to the existing properties. And then, of course, energizing of the new system once it's ready to go. And just as a note, they have informed us that there would be multiple interruptions that could be expected when they do complete their portion of the work, if that should happen. So, and this goes back to the discussion about what the municipality would be responsible for. So prior to Hydro One mobilizing to do their part of the hydro change from overhead to underground, the municipality would need to obtain a civil contractor to do most of the underground work associated with burying of the hydro. And that work includes all the duct work along the Main Street corridor, below grade, of course, the duct work across the road from one side to the other to provide the services to the properties on the west side. The installation of the concrete vaults, which the transformers and those kiosks would then sit on, and then any miscellaneous work associated with running duct or conduit to the existing meter bases for each property. So unlike the work done by Hydro One, though, there shouldn't be any hydro outages as part of this work. But you can, however, like any type of underground construction, expect it to be disruptive given the nature of the excavation that's required to complete that installation. Next slide, Kelly. So in conjunction with the discussion that has been held with Hydro One, and I think council's maybe seen this before, they've narrowed down their cost estimate for the component of burying the hydro. And we've also provided an estimate for the civil component of the work that's required. So it's assumed that most of the underground work will be completed at the same time as part of an initial stage, as there is an advantage of getting the trench work done at the same time. So to clarify that, it would be our suggestion that the ductwork for the hydro and the proposed storm sewer installation occur generally at the same time, or at least within the same general time frame. With that said, the most recent estimate provided by Hydro One for Blue Water's share of the work done by Hydro, it's been rounded to about $400,000. We note that Hydro has classified their budget amount as a Class C estimate, given the preliminary nature of the concept, which has a plus or minus of 50% associated with it. But with that said, we also understand that $400K is probably a reasonable budget amount to carry, and future estimates may not vary by much compared to that amount. But the way their system is set up, they're required to apply a certain class of estimate to the numbers they provide, depending on the stage of where their design's at. So we also understand, and for information purposes, that 400,000 also includes the cost associated with work to connect each property to the new buried service. So that would be the connection to the actual buildings. So in addition to that, we have the civil component. So that's on top of the Hydro One estimate. And that's the installation of the ductwork, the concrete vaults, and restoration, which will be led by the municipality. And we estimate that to be in the order of another $250,000. So with that said, for the hydro, to go from overhead to bury, we're looking at an amount of about $650,000 plus HST. To fully bury everything from Clan Gregor right up to Catherine Street.
Okay, Ron?
Yeah, so to assist in understanding what these concepts might look like, we've prepared some before and after images. Here you can see the existing condition for the ice cream shop there. And that fencing was put up for COVID, I think, to accommodate outside. At the bottom is what the proposal might look like. In the background, you see a row of new trees. Above the trees is the recommended light standard that's shown in black, could be green. On the ground, we've resolved some of the grade differential issues. The sidewalk sort of drops down and there's a lip of concrete that forms in front of the shops there. So that's been resolved. And we're showing this option with plain concrete with a broom finish and exposed aggregate banding through it. We did prepare some other images showing this in reverse with the fields rather than that light white concrete look in exposed aggregate and white bands. And we've also done them with all exposed aggregate. So just showing some different options. The next image shows this area across the street. And again, you can see the exposed aggregate pathway coming from the post office there in front of the shops, and then contrasting materials to provide some cues for people and defining the entrance into the shop, and the placement of benches, gathering places along the street, illustrated here. And lots of new trees. In this case, this is in front of the craft brewery and a little restaurant there. You can see the exposed aggregate walkway in the foreground and the exposed aggregate panels appearing. Here, the pavement runs right to the parking area, and getting rid of that sort of trampled earth that often happens in between, and providing some more space for outdoor eating and animation of that space by the current occupant of the buildings. Lots of green space and the preservation of that one tree there, and new trees, lots of new trees in the background.
Okay, so now we're going to go over each of the different components with our recommendation. So in regards to sidewalks, we're recommending the exposed aggregate sidewalks at a width of 2.2 meters with a smoother finish, but not a slippery finish. So they would be, we did have comments from the accessibility committee that they don't want the surface to be bumpy, but they also don't want it to be slippery. So it would be a compromise sort of between those two. For lighting, we're proposing to go with the 2-zone lighting that was previously proposed. For the crosswalks, we're suggesting that the crosswalks be removed from the design, and there would be no designated crosswalks. For building entrances, the placemat concept that was originally proposed has been removed, and we're proposing that there be a more simplified design that would reflect the current use of those spaces. And there's different options to have contrasting bands of the exposed aggregate and the tinted concrete that would define those spaces visually for people with visual impairments. For the project extents, we're suggesting that the project would stop at the west limit of Virtual High School at the west end, and that at Charles, only the sidewalks would be extended. No road work in that section, but there would be the one we're suggesting the one accessible parking space be retained. For infiltration basins, we've reduced the number and the size of the infiltration basins that are proposed so that more of the parking spaces can be restored. For bump outs, we've also reduced the number to again allow for more parking, and have suggested they would be provided primarily where they're needed from a safety perspective. For parking, as Dale mentioned, we've increased the parking by reducing the bump outs, the number of bump outs, and minimizing some of the green space beside some of the large trees, as well as minimizing the number of infiltration basins. Paved parking would only be the only spots where there's paved parking proposed is where there's accessible parking spaces. And there is a possibility that you could have some additional pavement in areas where there is pavement currently. That would be your decision. Certainly from the accessibility standpoint, paved parking is better than gravel for accessible reasons. Curbing, as Dale discussed, we would use the rollover curb as much as feasible, except where it's required for grading purposes, for drainage, or as a barrier for cars and for protection of the trees. And it would be, we're suggesting it be tinted the same color as the sidewalks to blend with those. And for pavement width, we're suggesting that we go with a compromise of 9 meters. So we're increasing the width from the 8 meters that was originally proposed. And this is to allow more space for trees, for pedestrians, and for the proposed hydro vaults if the hydro is buried. Okay, Dale?
Yes. So from an overall project timing perspective, one of the bigger factors affecting when work can proceed is the design associated with burying the hydro, if that's something that happens, followed by the final design of the elements associated with the road, the boulevard, and of course landscaping within the boulevard. And I think it's fair to say that a final design of all elements can likely be hammered out this year. I can't speak for hydro, but definitely from our end, which would allow construction to begin in 2022. So given how busy most contractors are, the elevated price of materials that we're seeing right now because of supply issues that are occurring, and general uncertainty associated with the pandemic, we think a 2022 start is likely appropriate. I think you'd have a hard time finding a contractor anyway. Well, you might find one, but the cost may be double or something crazy like that. So one possible schedule, as noted on the screen, includes the installation of all underground work in the fall of next year, followed by completion of the road and boulevard work in the following year in 2023. So we've heard from many, and we've said this before, that summer construction is not preferred. And work may therefore need to be halted between June and September before finish things up in the fall of 2023. I would suggest that you take this schedule as perhaps a worst case scenario, and again, assuming budget is available and things happen with hydro, as there may be opportunity to revise the timelines once you get a better idea of how quickly you may get a hydro design in place and how available contractors are for next year. So I think there is definitely some flexibility in what we show on the screen. And should you get to a point where things move into construction as the plan for construction becomes more clear, a program would be developed so that all business owners and residents are kept in the know on the construction plan. And that would be normal for a project of this nature where you have a lot of businesses within the corridor that you need to make sure know what's going on. Next slide. So from a construction cost budget perspective, we're currently sitting at around 2.2 million. And that includes the storm sewer work, a small portion of the conduit for the hydro, because we had already included the crossings on the west side of the road in our original budget. the proposed road works, the proposed boulevard works, landscaping, street lighting, including that accent lighting in the boulevards. And in addition to the above, then there's the cost to bury the hydro, which puts the total capital cost up closer to about 2.8 million. And I think Public Works report, it has much more detail in it related to the cost estimate. So if there's any questions, probably that's a good thing to look at once we get into the report later on.
Okay, so next steps. This slide was originally prepared when I thought that we would be going to council a couple weeks ago. So it doesn't quite reflect and getting comments from the public afterwards. So really the next step here is once council has a final design and decides on these different details, and we can move forward with the final design component. It will be somewhat dependent on the timing for hydro, and we still have to receive our final approval from the Ministry of the Environment. So that's it for next steps. Okay, I can stop sharing my screen.
So with that, if there are any questions specific to the presentation from Kelly, Dale, and Ron, I'm sure they'd be happy to answer them now, or alternatively, if it's council's wish, we can get into my report, which gets into some additional detail with respect to the design elements and the feedback that we've received. And then we can also address comments through that avenue as well, if that's the preferred way of addressing this.
Mr. Mayor? Did we lose him?
Oh, Paul, I think.
About that, thank you. Council, is there any questions, or is that, you heard Dave, is that the process we'll do? We'll start in with the recommendations, or?
Mr. Mayor, it's Councillor Whetstone.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have any issue. I think what I'd like to see is the questions being held off directly to BM Ross, and then we work through as Dave suggested, work through the independent items, have discussions on those, and I'm sure that they can funnel in with answers at that time. Something that I think we also need to make sure we're very cognizant of, because this is a heritage, the Heritage District, that we keep into consideration and weighted very heavily as to, with respect to what the recommendation was from the Heritage Committee as well too, which was part of last night's report, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So,
thank you.
So and they have supports in there, and you'll find, I think they're fairly much consistent with a lot of the input that we've been receiving from the public anyways. But let's make sure, I'll be making sure that we are keeping them in mind anyways. I've got the report in front of me.
Thank you. And I believe in discussing it, Dave Kester made that point to me, I think yesterday or the day before too. So good. Okay. Then Dave, you ready to proceed? And we'll work our way through. And
yeah,
councilors,
absolutely.
Just before, I guess as a process, please, if I don't see your hand, just say, Councillor, I have a question, and we'll keep it fairly easy going if we can, as the chair. Thank you.
So in front of you tonight is a report that was generated, and my apologies for it being as long as what it is. And I did this just because I wanted to make sure that we did have the opportunity to touch on the key items that were discussed, that we heard through public feedback, that we've heard through conversation with council. and items that were brought up through our advisory committees, being heritage as well as AODA or accessibility compliance is concerned. And thank you, Councillor Whetstone, for making mention with respect to the heritage. I did have a note here just to make mention, and it is also identified in my report. It was something that was in last night's council agenda package, but it is something that we have we've done. We were mindful and incorporated those comments. We are fortunate that we have two individuals with us tonight who are actually participants in that advisory committee as well. So it is something that we're very mindful of, and wanted to ensure that we were within standing of that advisory committee as well. So with that, I will identify in front or on the screen here right now are the recommendations, and there are, I think, 16 recommendations in front of us. But rather than go through them and read them off the page here, I actually segmented them out and identified each element that's associated with each recommendation, and then I included the recommendation as part of that. So we'll go through that, but quickly, just if I may, before I start that, I also wanted to draw council's attention to the process diagram. And I know, and again, I do acknowledge that this was a long report, but there's a process diagram that was included as part of this report package that identifies as well the elements, and then basically the design concept behind it, the feedback that was received on that design element, the response that was done by the design team, and then the feedback again, the response, until we got to our to the end point of where we are today. And I thought that it was just important to highlight this, to recognize that that there has been that we're appreciative of the public feedback that we have got through this process, and my feelings, as well as I think the rest of the design team's feelings, are that it's allowed us to create a very refined and a very appropriate plan as part of the as part of what we have in front of us tonight. And then and with that, if Jody, if you wouldn't mind going back up to the background component, and we'll start with element 1, and I'll go through the elements, and if it is council's wish, I can go through the specific literature to each one, or I can just identify the recommendation specifically, and we can discuss any questions that may revolve around that specific recommendation. Was my thought on that. But again, if it is that we want to go through and discuss each of the speaking points to that, that's okay as well. So recommendation 1, that AODA compliant exposed aggregate sidewalks with an average width of 2.2 meters will be included as part of the Bayfield Main Street sidewalk design. So if there are any questions on that, by all means, please don't hesitate to share, and we can discuss them at this time.
Any questions?
Councillor Whetstone here. I'll be honest, I'm probably going to have a comment on most, just to be honest. And forgive me if sometimes I'm trying to look at 3 different sheets in front of me at the same time to make sure that I'm asking all the questions. And I'm not sure when this comes into play, Dave. And I assume it'll be more in the detailed design once we approve widths, those type of things. But so I'm going to give an example. So if we look at the heritage advice that came forward, I do understand from there, you staff went and measured currently what we have today. That was sort of your basis of going forward with anything, was what do we currently have today from sides, especially from the pathways that exist today. And they ranged from, I think it sees in there 2.2 to 3.4. So you suggested the 2.2. And I think the minimum, is it 1.8, Dave, is what the minimum width is for sidewalks to be compliant?
So 1.5 is the
okay,
minimum
thank you.
width to be compliant with AODA standards.
Okay, so the pathway is 2.2. And one of the comments that we received that I've seen lots of as well too is At one point in time, one of our diagrams showed these pathways meandering along the side. Currently, what we have today is fairly straight. You know, they may move up and down in different locations based on where they are in front of the buildings as well too. But if we can somewhat, and I think that's an easy fix, is to get them back to a meandering type pathway. It feels like a pathway versus a sidewalk. Then is kind of the idea, which is what we have today. Earth tones when we go to put any color into it. Now, one thing I did hear on there is from an accessibility standpoint, they would like them a little bit more smoother. If I heard that correctly, more smoother than rougher in Kelly's presentation. Did I hear that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. So the idea, and I understand that the idea of the stone is to make it look more like a gravel perspective. So I'm not sure how you're ever going to do that without having some of that gravelly feel. But maybe there's a combination. It's still just a matter of because I wouldn't want to see it as be a super smooth surface and you're just looking at stones embedded. The idea is that it feels like gravel that you're actually walking on, and that's sort of that's the intent of the heritage advice too. And I think that's a lot that I've been seeing. So outside of those, and again, I don't know if that comes into detailed design, Dave, those type of comments. So I'm telling them now, I guess, more than anything else. But but as far as the 2.2, sure, I'd like to see it less than that. But at the same time, 2.2 seems to be what we're averaging today, and it seems to be a nice casually walk on the paths where we have today.
Yeah, and perhaps Ron can speak to this as well. But I think that what you would find, especially in a situation where there is a more dense population or higher usership of a sidewalk or a path, that you would find that the minimum 1.5 would become quite narrow, and such that as well, that if two individuals were using walkers, they would have difficult time, or two individuals in wheelchairs, they would have difficult time passing one another on a 1.5 meter sidewalk, whereas the 2.2 I think lends itself a little bit better, and it's on the narrower side of what is actually existing on Bayfield Main Street right now, and we did have conversation as well with respect to the meandering nature of the paths. And to your point, Councillor Whetstone, it is something that we can tweak a little bit during the final design pieces of it, but to the point that was discussed actually by Ron as well, is that it becomes a balance between trying to ensure that we align with the AODA stuff to have a usable path that works on that end, as well as something that aligns with the heritage component. So so finding that balancing, so it's not just a straight path, but it's also not something that becomes overly difficult for an individual to walk down who has some sort of impairment visually or otherwise. But I don't know, Ron, if there was anything that you wanted to add to that.
That's good, Dave. That is a balance, absolutely. I think we can incorporate some more curvilinear form into the design, absolutely. The trick is acquiring enough space that the curve makes sense and doesn't look like it was badly built.
Sure.
So if you haven't got enough linear distance, you just can't accomplish a curve that makes sense to a person walking on it. And but we heard the comment, and absolutely we'll look for opportunities to soften those edges and create more a curvilinear nature in the next iteration of the design.
And I appreciate that, Ron. And I think you sort of mentioned it there. There was a word that I'm not sure what you used, but it came to my mind where it would look like it's a little bit more just a natural path that occurred versus, squared off or whatever, that type of thing, right? So because if it's linear, then it doesn't look like it's just natural anymore, right? So I appreciate that. So one comment, other one that I do have is actually And I guess it is the pathway. So, and this, I'll be honest, this was a late question that I sent to Dave Kester. So Dave, forgive me. I think you did have a chance to look at it though. So here's an example. And I got to be honest, I was looking at all areas where we could potentially try to reduce some of the cost out of this as well. So Clan-Gregor Square area. So one of the questions I had is there a need to include the pathway surfacing on the Clan-Gregor Square portions? And Dave, did you get a chance to dig into that one?
Yeah, so I did, and that was through conversation between Dale and I, and so it was included as part of the design to allow for that engagement piece at Clan-Gregor Square. To actually have it that there's that interface there between the Bayfield Main Street as well as as it engages with Clan-Gregor, and so that was really the intent behind that design element there. I would suggest that although there is some cost savings that would be associated with that, it wouldn't be significant as well. So I would just make the comment that I appreciate every dollar trying to be saved on the project, because that was really the effort that I had done as well as the rest of our design team had done in the past 2 weeks, is just making sure that we had this thing as tight as we possibly could financially. To the point where we actually revised the numbering on it and updated the presentation to tighten those numbers up. But with the acknowledgement that we don't want to make it look like there's pieces that were forgot about either.
Choppy. All right. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Any other councillors, questions regarding the sidewalk materials? Okay,
Mr.
Dave.
Mayor, yeah, I do have a question.
Go ahead. Sorry, jump in.
I do have a question, and it is to Dave. Is there any extra maintenance with that?
So there's no additional maintenance, and I know that generally speaking, like with respect to the exposed aggregate, that generally speaking, when people visualize it in their head, it's in a driveway or a walkway in somebody's home where they seal it on an annual basis. That's not required. So I know that there is a thought out there that it is a requirement on an exposed aggregate pathway, but that is not actually the case. It's generally done because somebody likes the additional luster that it may provide to the driveway or to the walkway, but it's definitely not a requirement to ensure the longevity of the product.
Okay, good, thanks. I'm comfortable with it. I like it, and there's lots of examples of it around, so it'll look good.
Thank you. Any other questions to Dave on this?
I do have, I guess, one more follow-up question on that. Maybe it falls under something else, to be honest. I could maybe bring it up, and well, I'll bring it up now as well too. It kind of does a little bit of both. So, so the discussion at the Heritage Committee, obviously everyone knows that I sit on that committee. One of the discussions was where, actually, you know what? I'm going to leave it till later. So that's going to open up a whole other discussion, and let's stick with the agenda than anything else in the order that it is. So sorry about that. I'm just trying to bring it to the right spot, but let's do it later.
Okay, and maybe I'm not in the right spot either here. But with regards to, this is just the exposed aggregate issue. We saw pictures, and I was under the impression that the one that was just not going to have any of this delineation, Dave.
That's a different topic. That's down
I was going to say that's addressed at a later point.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, drive on.
Yeah.
So that's not everybody that's a recommendation. Everybody generally feels that's okay on. All right.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Quick question. So there's 16 recommendations, and we're going to go through them individually now with Dave. Just curious, does it make sense to make motions on each one as we go through? Because it may get discussed again. It may get discussed again once we go back and start making motions on the recommendations.
I was just going to ask if your worship, if it was, if we could, I was going to ask if we could pass the motions as we move through this.
Okay.
Just to, because it has been discussed and it's fresh in everyone's minds. If it's not the wishes of council, again, I understand that. But that if we could, that would be, that was my thought on
All
it.
right, well then we're gonna, actually, I think that makes sense to try that as much as possible. So is there a mover and a seconder for this recommendation number 1?
Counselor Harris.
Thank you. Seconder,
Vandenberg.
Annenberg, thank you. Okay, any further discussion on this?
Yeah, Councillor Whetstone. So this is where I guess the detailed design portion of it comes into play. I'm supporting it, don't get me wrong. It's that if the motion doesn't say that we're going to make it Mirandering, all that kind of stuff, are we missing out on that? That's my point. I want to make sure those other items are captured.
Yeah, I'm going to suggest that, and then just for argument's sake here, for discussion, it's been stated that the question was asked.
Yeah.
The Ron Cowdice said, we're going to try to make it as much as possible, recognizing that you don't want to make it look like a drunken sailor, if I can do that word. And I think we should take his word at that. We all heard it. If there's any counselor that is adamant that the road should be straight, period, then let's have that discussion. But not hearing anyone saying that let the staff and the people that have the expertise, and keeping in mind, we all, I think, are in a general agreement that we're trying to make the AODA as our tool. So that's how I think we should leave it. To start putting it in the motion, then we're going to have a discussion. What is meandering? I think we're just going to have to trust them.
I have no issue with that, Mr. Mayor, and I guess we'll see final design as council will anyways at some point in time. So so
it's not probably
no issue.
Yeah, no, but it's good to get that straightened up. And please, councilors, we're here to have get off our mind what it is, because this is, at the end of the day, this is just like everybody's that was talking to us said, wow, it's sort of permanent. We want to try to get it right. We get
Agreed.
Okay, so make sure we do ask the questions. If we hear it, it's documented, and we, as always, we get to see the final design to tweak it a bit. It's probably not a cost big one way or the other. So to the point, I have a motion, a mover and a seconder. Are we in favor of using this aggregate material? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you. Road width. There's a recommendation here. Is there a mover and a seconder for discussion? Let's try it that way. On the 9 meter for just.
Councillor Whetstone.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
Vandenberg.
Thank you. Okay, discussion. We've heard from BM Ross. I will open it up on that. We've heard the discussion here. Is there anyone wishing to comment?
So I do have a couple of questions, I guess, if I could. And this is for, I guess it's either BM Ross or Dave, one or the other. When you're referring to gutter, when you meant gutter, did you mean the rollover curbs when you mean gutter?
When I speak to gutter, there's really 2 parts of a curb. There's the first foot of the curb, which is against the asphalt. That's the gutter. And then the back part of it is really, I don't even know what the official name is, Councillor Whetstone, but it's really the barrier part of it. In the case of a drive over curb though, or a rollover curb, it's dropped. So the gutter line is what the water would basically flow within.
Okay, so when we're talking the width of the road here, we're talking from the rollover curb to rollover curb?
We're talking from the edge of the concrete on one side to the edge of the concrete on the other. And then in addition to that, you have your curb on each side of that.
Okay, I guess I'm still, so you're not talking in the term that's in there right now, you're not talking from barrier curb through the parking spots, across the road, through the parking spots to barrier curb.
No, we're talking the asphalt width of the driving lanes.
Thank you. That's all I need to know.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any further questions, comments, Counselor?
One more, if I could.
Go
The
ahead.
road width at the islands, where the island is, that seems to narrow quite a bit. And just wondering if there's some details as to what is it? Do we know what it is today? I believe it's probably narrower. And what's the purpose of the widening or narrowing of it? I'm just trying to understand it more than anything else.
Want me to take that, Dave, or?
Sure, go ahead, Dale. Yep.
Okay. Yep. So Dave had forwarded me your question about that, Council.
Thanks.
So I looked at that, and it does vary like everything out on Main Street. The width varies from about 4.5 to 6 meters wide, depending on which leg of the island you're looking at.
Yeah.
And we're proposing to standardize that width down to 5 meters, which is, typically it's going to be a little over a typical driving lane that we're going to have on Main Street at the end of the day. So if we have 9 meters road width, we're looking at half that is 4.5. Our merge lanes that would be associated with the islands are going to be 5 meters in width.
Okay, and because we don't have a separate item on these, I think it's probably a good time to have that quick discussion. Is the islands themselves, have they increased in size?
Not significantly. Yes, they have increased a little bit more. I guess more so to delineate the direction of travel as you come into the island or head out of the island. We have extended them somewhat, and we could decrease them, like the amount of curbing that would be installed as part of that island, should you want to look at that. But in the same token, we'd put the thought in your head that we should probably be extending paint to delineate that more. And I don't know what you prefer as a council, paint or curbing, but we like to make sure that the cars coming into the island, they know where they're going, and we know where they're going when they come out of the island.
Okay. I'm just thinking there's potential, because one of the items is that we always talk about is getting rid of as much cement or curbing as possible. As you just said, I'm not so sure paint is a good solution either, but maybe that's still something in final design that can be discussed.
Yep.
And I would suggest, if I may, I would suggest that having the slightly more area within that island configuration is actually going to end up being green space. And so it would actually be within kind of the general concept that we've heard to try and keep the reduced amount of hard surfacing as part of the design as well.
Great, thank you. All my questions.
Okay, we have a mover and a seconder. Is there any more discussion? I'm going to call a question. All those in favor of recommendation number 2, 9 meter width average? Say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Accessible parking. We have the preamble and the recommendation that we have a minimum of 3 spaces available on Main Street. Is there a mover or seconder for this?
Deputy Mayor?
And Whetstone seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Parking spaces. You see the number here, which corresponds to BM Ross's discussion. There's a recommendation that this is what we work towards, and with a gravel surface.
And sorry, if I can, through you, your worship, I just want to make a comment as well, because there has been some comment shared on the potential of paving those surfaces.
Yep.
That I just wanted to make mention that cost item would be, if it were to transition to an asphalt surface, that would be an additional $45,000 to the price. So I just wanted to make mention of that, because it has been, I know that fairly consistently there has been individuals mentioning about the gravel surface, but there has been a number as well identifying and also identifying from an AODA standpoint that there would be benefit from that end. So I just did want to make mention as well through that discussion that if paved parking surfaces throughout the design, it would be about $45,000 addition to what's identified in the financial impact of this report.
Hey, thank you, because that's a fairly good news idea in one way, because I was asking about that, and I thought it was it was about 400,000. So councillors, if we were talking about that to anyone, I had the wrong information, and it's 45, so that at least is going the right direction. Councillors, discussion on this. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Harris.
Yes.
I have a question for Dave. And when I was reading about the gravel parking spaces, and I know it was requested, I just had a thought about snow removal. Who's responsible for snow removal in the parking spaces? And secondly, what cost the municipality has, like obviously if the plow goes through or gravel's pushed onto the main street, do we have to replace gravel every year? Is that an issue, or has it been thought about?
Through you, your worship, and so the parking surfaces that are on Bayfield Main Street right now, generally speaking, are gravel, and so there is we do add a minor amount from time to time. It's not significant. It's not the same as the maintenance gravel that we put on like our roads, like our municipal roads throughout the municipality. And then the other piece is as well that like once that gravel surface becomes frozen through the year, it really doesn't move a whole lot. So our staff is the one that is responsible for that, and we for removal of the snow, but we've also done that for many years now as well.
Thank you.
Hey, other questions to Dave?
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
Councillor Whetstone again, and it kind of ties into a couple things. It ties into accessibility, but also ties into the parking that we're on right now as well too. Dave, I think there was something that I sent you as well too, that again, I was far reaching, trying to find some potential savings anywhere along the lines, right, to help out where we could, which, and I don't know if there is a requirement where the accessibility parking spots have to go, if they can all go in one location and that area be paved where because now we do have some parking spots downtown that currently are paved today. They're not all gravel. And maybe it would be consistent with trying to do that in some of those areas as well too. Just something we can look at for maybe future, if that's allowed or not, or is it best practice to try to have some throughout the downtown accessibility? I mean, parking spots throughout the downtown.
And just through you, your worship, and I definitely appreciate that for a comment, and I think it's a really good suggestion, and it is something that we will definitely look at as part of finalizing our detailed design with exactly where the accessible parking spots will be placed. So that way we can basically, they can serve dual function. They can be that paved parking spot, but also be the accessible parking spot as well.
Thank you, Dave.
Any other questions to Dave on this? I guess I have, and that was why I brought up about the paving, because I know in our discussions at the second meeting, I think it was, or the third, doesn't matter, it was the last one anyway. It was said that OAD would they would appreciate it all paved, because it will be, we hope there's many people come to visit, and it isn't just 3 or 4 parking spots. It was talked about we needed but maybe we needed the gravel for filtration. It was pointed out very clearly by both you and Dale that we really don't count it anymore, but once it's packed. I guess it kind of alludes to the issue of that issue and $45,000. I know it's more cost, but the other issue is going back to Councillor Harris's point. And yes, you said you deal with it. There's small amounts of gravel, but could it be argued at all that it's $2,000 or $3,000 every year that we're having extra costs? That you could say that, and if you want time to think about that, that's fine. I
would say that it would be. I don't know that we would get to that $2,000 or $3,000 mark. There is an expense, but it would be like, it would basically equate to maybe a tone worth of granular, which we're purchasing at about $12 a tone. And then plus the time to actually have an individual. So, you know, there's generally, it would be maybe half a day's worth of work. So it's not a significant amount of time that's invested or a significant amount of dollars invested in that piece.
Right.
But again, I can appreciate the comments of where it's coming from as well, that, you know, from an AODA perspective, it is definitely something that is within standing of what they're looking at.
Okay. Councilors, any further questions? Is there a mover and seconder for this recommendation?
Not yet.
We have a mover and seconder.
Councillor Whetstone.
Thank you. Seconder.
Irvin.
Thank you. Any further discussion, councilors? All those in, I'm going to call the question, then all those in favor of recommendation number 4 as presented, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you. Path from the shop to the sidewalk. I think this is the one that that I was wondering about too.
Yeah. So Jody, if I could, and sorry, through you, Your Worship, Jody, if I could ask you to go to, I think it's starting at 203. There was some additional concepts that were provided. I think we're a little zoomed in on this photo here. There were some initial concepts that were provided, or sorry, some additional concepts rather that were provided through the discussion here. Do you want to try and maybe zoom it out a little bit more, like maybe it's 75%? So what's in front of you is what was proposed. We changed the color on it a little bit to be more, let's say, natural, or the colors to be more within like what you would see for the exposed aggregate from a local quarry, or even aligning very similar to the chips and dust path that's there now. This also does have the brushed concrete pads that are incorporated as part of that visual cueing that we discussed during the presentation. But hearing that there was a fair bit of feedback, there was some discussion between the design team as to other options that we could look at that would actually basically do away with or reduce this look as well. So if we could actually scroll down a little bit, or to the next page. So this is, and Ron again had made mention of this, where we discuss kind of the reverse banding, where it's minimalized, but still provides that visual cueing that we're looking for from an AODA best practice to help try and provide some road markers, so to speak, as to where entrances of buildings are. And then as well, the next one underneath that is with nothing. There's no brushed concrete in this. It's exposed aggregate throughout, and understanding that there has been discussion on this. We wanted to just provide the 3 options that we had thought of just as part of this, to help provide some additional options for council in their decision-making process. So just if everybody wants to take a mental note of those photos, and we can go back up to item number 5 to discuss.
Okay. Oh, where was the Heritage Committee on this, Councillor Whetstone, in regards to the 3 options? You're on mute, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sorry. God, I've done that twice today. You think I'd know by now. So their recommendation was no banding whatsoever. And that basically was a decision that came because it wasn't a requirement from the from AODA. A smoother surface or a firmer surface was the requirement, but not the rest was a best practice. So they, and in all honesty, so that's one portion of it. Actually, yeah, that's the one portion of it. So they were no banding.
From a standpoint of those who over the years would like to have kept it gravel, to me, the no banding almost makes it about as natural as it can look and still move to the issue that we had to go with some solid materials. I'm also though asking about cost, Dave. Is there any savings at all between the three if you just leave it as the surface all the same? It obviously widens out at spots like that ice cream spot. We get that, but
So there's a slightly increased cost in exposed aggregate concrete versus a brushed concrete. However, when you're adding in detail items, then typically that detail item also creates cost as well. So it would be basically the one would outweigh or it would basically balance out the other. So it's not that there would be really any significant savings because like I said, there's going to be some additional effort put into incorporating that design that otherwise you wouldn't see that cost because it's simply just brushed concrete. So like I said, one would kind of balance out the other.
okay, well,
Mr. Mayor, may I make a comment?
go ahead, sir.
Prior to moving back to this region, I spent about 16 years in the concrete industry, and it'd be significantly more expensive to put the banding in when you count the labor and stuff like that. I'm not contradicting what Mr. Kester's saying, but I would agree with you and what Councillor Whetstone says. It looks much more heritage or natural without the banding. And honestly, there should be some cost savings in not putting banding in.
Okay, are you willing to make a motion that we go with the no?
Yes, sir, I would.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder for his motion?
Deputy Mayor?
Yep. Deputy Mayor?
And a
Yep.
comment, Mr. Mayor?
Sure. You
Yeah,
seconded it.
I seconded it, yes, and I'm of the same opinion as Councillor Waldman that I also think it formalizes it with that banding. It makes it look formal where it's informal and more natural or more authentic the other way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Without the banding.
My sense is, my gut reaction too is if we go all one thing, it definitely got to be a little bit cheaper when they go to get a contractor to do it. I'm with you on that.
Mr. Mayor, may I make another comment, please?
Yes, go ahead.
I've read and reread the comments that we've had sent in, and I believe that my motion reflects what the majority of the people have requested, but that's just my understanding.
Yep. And the Heritage Committee, from what I heard from Councillor Whetstone, it was is concurrence with their rule of thought too.
Mayor, I have a question, please.
Go ahead, Councillor Vandenberg.
Thank you. And it's to Councillor Whetstone. It's just for clarity then, because I'm looking at the Heritage Advice report. And it talks about the same colors and material and width with green areas on each side. What do they mean, or what do you mean by green areas on each side with respect to accessibility and equity, I guess it is?
So thank you. I was just about to discuss that. So that was a great lead in. Thanks for that one. So, and I'm not sure where this belongs, but this is more, I'm going to say is probably in this area here. So there was some discussion, and I'm going to say it was a fairly good discussion at the Heritage about this area, about areas such as the one we're looking at. We saw the picture that Dave brought up. So when we're trying to, again, it's about a bit about cost savings and heritage at the same time, and reducing the amount of, so basically there are some stores that have an entrance that you walk in. It's a retail shop. You open the door, you go into. There's other ones, such as the ice cream shop, where there is not a door that you go into. It's more of a area out front, as we saw from those pictures. So they're more conducive to having to have a little bit more, I'm going to say, of a gathering area type of thing. So that if you keep that in mind from what we just saw there on that picture, then you have other ones that I mentioned that have a door that they go into. So what the accessibility, I shouldn't say that, what the Heritage Committee was discussing is that for those areas, they don't need big placemats. They don't need a whole lot of cement or anything out front. Well, one of them that was there that they discussed was the brewery that was on there, the one picture there. For example, on that one, you walk down the sidewalk, it's 2.2 meters wide. The entrance is on, if you're going walking from west to east, you're walking down, your entrance is on the left-hand side. There's a sidewalk that if we have to match up with theirs, is still 2.2 wide to the entrance. We don't create all kinds of cement. We don't create cement that goes all the way to the curbs. We have more green space that is along the sidewalks. Then the only places that you would have more cement, more gathering area type cement would be places such as Copenhagen's, Rosie's, those type of ones that are more, you're not going into shop, you're not going into a restaurant, you're not doing anything of that type of thing, right? That's where they were coming into, and that eliminates some of that cement and actually saves us some money at the same time. So I think that's something. I think that's something we do need to absolutely consider, and the motion doesn't state that, but that's why I wanted to get to that. That it should, to me, it should, and this might from what I'm hearing as well too, plus the accessibility or from the Heritage, is that it should only be, now we can finalize that maybe in final design, where these gathering type placemats areas that we're not going to have any more placemats, but where more cement is going to be. But we should be minimizing where we can. It should be a path. It shouldn't be a path that comes to a great big area out front of just more cement out front of each shop. It should be a path that goes to another path that leads to a storefront or a set of stairs or however it is that they get into there.
Oh, okay, and I think we had some of this discussion on Friday, did we not, about this, Dave?
Yes, we did.
And could you just, again, I think, reiterate what you were referring to?
Yes. So really the intent behind the majority of this was to ensure that we're offering back what was in place in the first place, and then as well providing spots where access points can be provided to pedestrians throughout the main street areas, and not allowing or not providing areas where they can actually access the path, or where they can't access the path, and just having like that green space that would become trampled over, because there's the only spots then, and I know that it's been made mention of at different points through the conversation that many people that use Bayfield Main Street just cross the roads at different points. And so we wanted to try and ensure that we were giving that access point to somebody, that they're not having to go all the way to the end to go and cross the road. And again, trying to keep within holding of what is existing in front of these, the majority of these locations as well.
Do you have a picture of that at all, what you're referring to from the little spot as you scroll through? So what you're saying is if I'm hearing right, in front of the ice cream spot, they put this cobble in or whatever they did there to make it a hard surface so it wasn't muddy. We're saying that we're gonna put that back, and if this motion carries, it's just gonna all look the same. There's no lines or anything in it. Having said that, maybe across the street right now, the pathway is a 3-foot walkway to their door. We're not gonna go 5 feet wide in front of their place. We're going, if there's a 3-foot steps to their door, we're going up with our 3-foot steps to their door. Is that not what we're doing here?
Yeah, the effort is to stay within holding of what is consistent with what each location has.
Okay.
Was the intent behind what we have in our design.
So if I may, and I don't know if we could do this, could we bring back that picture? And maybe it would help a little bit too. If we could bring back the picture of, I guess it was the brewery, I guess is what we were talking about. So I think it was the next page, maybe after this one.
So it actually would be within the presentation.
Oh, was it? You don't have it on
yeah.
this one? Okay.
No, I don't have it in this one.
But
It's
here's,
actually-
I can do it with this one. This is fine. I can still make the idea on this. So as you can see on this one, if you take the picture of what it looks like today here, I think that's up. Is that in this one, Dave, at all too, or not?
No, it's
That's just the
not. We only have
presentation.
the
Okay, that's fine.
comparators. We only have the comparators in the presentation.
Yeah. So today it's fairly okay. There we go. Thank you. So it would be maybe one down still. Okay, so if we look at today, so if we're keeping in with consistency that we have today, we're actually not with this new plan. If you look at this, we have a pathway going in front, and we have green space, and then we have the parking. In the future, the plan here is to concrete that entire front right up to the parking spaces. Now, I get what you're saying. It gives people some places to access the paths from. They won't access them. What they do today, they'll walk over the grass. I don't care where you are along the road. They're just going to walk over the grass. They do it today. Nothing's going to stop them from going to and saying, "Oh, I need to go to a corner. I need to go to the accessible area." To me, it still should be. And to me, based on the advice that I've been getting and hearing, is that we should be putting more green space in and less of the aggregate here. So where that A-frame is, all that should be green space.
So
it eliminates costs too.
I think this is a perfect example actually of identifying where individuals are crossing and to make use of the building, because you can see that the grass in this location is actually fairly trampled as well. And that was really in an effort to try to not have that grassed area look trampled and look shabby over time, that it actually allowed for that access point and give something that actually is that's allowing that access point there.
And no doubt, Dave, I understand, and I know this is it'll come down to whatever the discussion is. From a heritage perspective, I would much rather have shabby tramped down grass than I would cement.
Okay. Councilors, you see a picture here. Now, clearly, if we pass this motion, you won't have it'll all be the same aggregate color, no matter.
Right.
But any comments with regards? We're going to try to have as many green spaces as possible. I guess I'll ask that first, right? To our people. In this particular case, it does go out to the edge. But I also see there's going to be is this going to be the idea that in front here, where those two people are, there's going to be some a garden, or is that just
it's a garden, or it's going to be grass or sod, something to that effect. Mm-hmm. And the other piece that I did, if I may, through your worship, is that that this detail here specifically was actually something that was discussed with the owner, that they were in favor with. Now I know that there were additional discussions that had identified that they're flexible as well. But then the other pieces that I would like to just draw your attention to, that again, if we had more areas to allow for that connectivity piece from side to side of street, if you'll look at the tree there in this photo, where you can see that there's some erosion taking place, and because there's not like that space where there can be that public impact, or that public engagement, it's impacting root zones, because people just don't have a good idea of where to engage with the path. And so as such, it's items like this that actually become detrimental to the tree canopy as well. because there is that trampling effect that's happening in those areas, because because people are just walking wherever and not being given the opportunity to walk in an area where there is some more appropriate engagement with from the street to the path.
Okay. Yeah, other
If I may,
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, and I do support what Dave just mentioned. In the picture that you talk about in the after, we have some sort of floral arrangements or something in that picture. I'm not saying that's exactly what it's going to look like, obviously, but people are not going to walk through where there's flowers. So if you look at the tree that's close up, they're not going to walk in there. They're going to walk where there isn't flowers. And so they'll walk either across where those other areas are, because the tree will be protected by flowers anyways. Then people aren't going to walk through a flower garden or a wildflower garden or a infiltration basin or whatever it may be.
No, but is not the point, sir, going back to in front of a business, we're trying to, I see that it's going to allow them to have a patio or a little bit out if it's allowed. They have to obviously get permission. And in this particular spot, a little bit of green, I grant you we're missing, but we sure are gaining a bigger area around this tree as a trade-off. And I think that is something the Heritage Committee, it says as much green as possible, but there's always going to be trade-offs. And without getting right into such detail, the motion is, are we going to have allow the one size fits all kind of thing here? And there was an example that it looks like there's going to be a bit more give and take, but surely we can work on the small detail of this at the end of it all. Let's get back to the recommendation.
So currently, what's the recommendation in the motion?
Currently, oh, sorry, through you, your worship, that an exposed aggregate pathway be included as part of the design at shop frontages and that there be no banding included.
Yeah, I won't support the motion as it stands.
Okay. And all right. As I'm saying, okay, other councilors, any comments?
Mr. Mayor, yeah, I mean, well, is there something there? Like, am I missing something? Why does Councillor Whetstone have an explanation? I'd like to hear why he doesn't want to support it on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I tried to explain that is that I have no issue with the greenery around the tree. It's from the tree. If you looked at that picture, it's from going from the sidewalk to the road itself. There's no need to have all that aggregate concrete in there when you could be putting grass or greenery in there instead.
Okay. Well, in that picture, I also look up the street a little further and see another tree that's on up the street further, and it's planted right in the center of that concrete. So it'll have like a 3-foot tree pit around it and then a steel grate over top of it. And that's a very, very harsh environment for any tree to live in. You know, we heard earlier about, needing 300 cubic feet or something to support a tree. The heat and the lack of rainfall and the concrete around that tree is not a good environment for a tree to grow up there either. So, it should be green all the way up if you're going to have green, I would say.
Any other councilors' comments?
Mr. Mayor,
go ahead. Who was?
I'll go second.
Go ahead. Who was?
Well, yeah, it's Councillor Irvin.
Yeah.
I thought the store owner wanted that patio.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Walden.
The motion, as I understand it, has to do with the type of surface. I don't know that the motion has to do with where exactly it's going to be placed. I could be misunderstanding.
But it'll flow. Some will be 2 feet to their doors or 3 feet, and others have like we just had 2 examples, the ice cream and the in front of the of this particular store. It's going to be a little wider to cover an area. And
yes, sir. But we voted on the surface. That's all we put the motion on.
Yeah, and it just pointed out that it's gonna be included as in connecting shops and frontages. Some will be narrow, some will be wider.
Yes, okay.
Okay, and Councillor Vandenberg brought up a good point, and that's what the discussion was. What is this green about? And it's about grass. And in this particular example, the grass will be gone, and other places. I think that's what I asked when I said, is there other spots we're still going to have grass, and to accommodate? And I heard the answer yes. So one has to decide as a councillor. You know, are we doing the best we can to get the intent, or not? And so Councillor Whetstone has pointed out his view. We all have to decide what we want to do when I call the question.
So if I may, for a further comment, I would like to see, before we make any of those decisions, where the rest of that greenery is, because there is a good majority that follow the same process where there's going to be large concrete in front of a lot of the shops going down.
Okay, I thought when we talked about this that we were going to allow flexibility with the owners. We made a comment. Now,
Yep, absolutely. So flexibility with the owners is flexibility. Paving isn't flexibility. Flexibility with the owners is if they want to put a chair out front, if they want to do something like that, if all of a sudden and that was further down when we were looking at seating, taking seating out of the scope of work.
Okay, so do we have any place on those businesses that have just grass on the side, or maybe they put mulch or something on each side? They have like a 3-foot or a 4-foot walkway to their door. I'm being a little facetious, but I guess on the record here, do we have that now? Or is every place going to have as requested pavement?
That's two. Can I answer that? That's two different comments. You're talking closest to the building. I'm talking furthest from the building, closest to the curbs. Two different spots.
Okay. We've talked to the business people, have we not?
That's correct, yes.
All right, and you reflect what they've asked, and they're being a little, they said they'd be flexible, and I don't want to put a lot of words in your mouth, but I think I heard that.
So I could also ask Kelly if she would like to, because she did much of the engagement with the shop owners. But yes, we did engage with as many as we could with respect to the design, to try and incorporate their desires in front of their building, in front of the buildings that they're operating their businesses out of, and be aware of or cognizant of their of what they're trying to achieve at their businesses.
Okay.
Yeah, I can speak to that. We did meet individually, and in most cases, the design reflects the desire of the business owners to have those spaces, like specifically the brewery. They had said they had a plan to possibly expand their patio area. So that's why we looked at shifting it closer to the road so that they could potentially, you know, assuming they can get approval, expand the patio area. There may be areas though, Councillor Whetstone, where these areas could be minimized. So I agree, we could certainly look at that in the final design and minimize these areas. In areas where it wasn't specifically requested by the business owners.
So I would definitely suggest we retouch base with them, because when the final design came out, or this design, I don't say the final design, when this design came out, I had a discussion with the chamber president who on this specific topic, and she sent out a request from the chamber and had a response that they didn't care one way or the other.
Okay, so again, there's a lot of things we can have the final detail about in the final discussion. So as I will throw this out to all of us, it's not going to increase the costs of the road paving, or sorry, of the sidewalks, by the sounds of it. It may have a slight decrease, but of course, at the final look at it, we'll go have the staff and everyone go through it. But the basic premise of this motion is this is what we're going to do with the, we're not going to have the visual and textured contrasting parts of the sidewalk. And the final details what can be we heard it on the record, the staff, BM Ross, and talk to the owners and then keep it in context with the Heritage Committee and then twig it. Is that
So
okay?
that's actually incorrect. This goes against what the Heritage Committee has proposed.
I said the Heritage Committee, we can twig it. The owners can be talked to and say, listen, can you make some more green space or have the discussion? As you pointed out.
May I ask a question, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes, Councillor.
When I made the motion, I was basing it on the original average width of the sidewalk. Could Mr. Kester please restate that?
Agreed.
2.2.
Yeah, so I was envisioning the exposed aggregate on the average of 2.2, not putting concrete everywhere, as I think is Mr. Whetstone's concern.
Well,
You are correct, Councillor
well,
Waldner.
we're not. That's not. No, this is with regards to the areas where there's going to be a little wider, like the examples we just saw. And the question was going to be, do we have texture or visual, or even in front of any other store, any store when we get to it? I apologize. It might be only 2.2 meters, and it comes to a walk that goes into a store. They were going to try as part of the.
So it's on material. This is on material. The vote.
Yeah, so the
is on
material. No matter what is poured or not poured, it's going to be all the same.
Regardless of the size.
Yeah,
Material.
that's what the motion is.
Yes. Thank you.
And I just, as I heard the discussion with regards to in front of each building, the staff and BM Ross said that at that point, we can see if we can accommodate the Heritage and the owner. And that surely we can do that. Can we not?
I would think that that there's definitely an ability to, in my way of thinking, that there's an ability to strike a balance.
Okay. All right. So are we prepared on the recommendation here and understanding that like even a couple others back that there's going to be some discussions with owners or with you know, and to try to accommodate everyone's best intentions on the street, realizing it shouldn't be any more cost. That's I think the key thing for us as councillors when we pass these motions.
So what's the current motion? Again, sorry.
The current motion is we're gonna take out visual and textured contrasting in the areas in front of shops. The sidewalk, it's gonna be all the same. The sidewalk and any area that is made of the hard surface, it will all look the same. Is what basically that means.
Exposed aggregate.
Exposed aggregate. Thank you.
That's what I understood.
So I can live with that motion, and I guess we'll have to create because I'll be honest, I'm not letting this go.
Well,
A second motion would be made then that we request to discuss with the business owners once again. I can make that motion once we get this one passed.
fine. If you feel it needs to be a motion, I'm quite satisfied that we've all heard it. And my word's as good as that, but we can also make a motion. Fair enough. I'm going to call the question. Who's all in favor of the recommendation that it all be the same texture?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Councillor, you have a further motion at this time?
Sure. That well, if we look at the Heritage, their request was that it'd be a 2.2 meter width, which would be the same as what the building entrances would be the same width, material and color as the pathways. So I believe that we should have a discussion. The motion would be that we have further discussions regarding reducing the amount of pathway or area of cement with the business owners and reduce where we can.
Okay, is there a seconder for that motion?
Councillor Walden.
Okay, thank you. And the motion is it'll be the business people will have the discussion before the final layout is. They're going to be discussing it with the Heritage Committee. Is that what you're envisioning if this motion is passed?
Well, I think it'd be with staff. I don't think it'd be with the Heritage Committee. We already know what the Heritage Committee feels. I think it'd be, if that would be a something in the final design. How can we reduce the area as much as possible for all those areas, right?
Okay, is the BM Ross and yourself, Dave, are you comfortable and understand the motion if it passes?
Yes, I'm comfortable with the motion.
Can I speak, Mayor Klopp?
Yes, you can, please.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it would be helpful at this time, and perhaps Ron or Kelly, and I know they're not Kelly's drawings, but could speak to this, if the presentation that they showed with the landscape plans, if it would be helpful to look at those at this time or not, to help illustrate, you know, the aggregate versus proposed grass or green area, as well as because I know you're adding in a substantial amount of trees. So I'm not sure that it's been captured in the discussion so far. And I think it relates to what Councillor Whetstone is trying to capture. And I also know that, like Kelly, you're part of the Heritage Committee as well. So perhaps with that a landscape plan in mind, can comment on, and I know the balance between AODA and the Heritage Committee. So I'm thinking perhaps it was to strike a balance that we have the proposed design that is there.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I think we were trying to strike a balance based on the discussions we've had with property owners, but I think the recommendation that Councillor Whetstone has brought forward would be useful to refine those areas and see if there is additional green space that can be captured and minimize some of the additional hard surface. So I think it can easily be done as part of final design and would normally be done as part of final design anyways.
Thank you. Thank you, CAO. Okay, does that satisfy everyone that we can call the question? Hearing no more questions, I'm going to call the questions. All in favor of this motion, please say aye.
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 Right.
Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. Thank you. Curbing, element 6. The tinted concrete curbing shall be installed within the parking stalls utilizing the rollover curbing and roadside and barrier curbing and parking stall limits. Discussion, is there someone ready to make a motion?
I would move that we do that.
Councillor Walden, seconded.
Yes.
Seconded.
Councillor Irvin.
Councillor Irvin, thank you. Any discussion?
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Mayor, yeah, I have a question, and I guess it goes to probably Dale or somebody that Kelly or whatever, somebody from BM Ross. I understand the need for the curbing, and especially the barrier curbing, because otherwise you're going to have people that are going to drive right up onto the sidewalk if you don't stop them somehow. And I know there's an elevation change there and some grade change, so I understand how that incorporates that. But I'm going to go back to the rollover curbing. Now, I know that we're trying to correct a problem that's there now, but we don't have any curbing between the gravel and the pavement. And I realize it's good engineering. I realize it directs the water, and you have said that. How big an impact is there if you take that curbing out? If you don't include it in the plan? Just a rollover curbing.
Yep. So just the curbing you're speaking to along the edge of the roadway itself then?
Yes, exactly. And I'm talking about engineering impact, not necessarily financial. I don't want to do anything that's a detriment to the engineering, but if it's a minimal, if it has a minimal effect and you can still achieve the drainage, would we be ahead to take that out?
Well, probably the appropriate thing for me to say would be, as engineers, we can make anything work. But with that said, I'd be really hesitant to pull it out. And at the end of the day, if we were pulling it out, I would want to put an asphalt gutter in there, which, yeah, I still wouldn't have a whole lot of faith in a contractor's ability to put that in at an appropriate grading to make it all work.
Well, I wouldn't want to see that asphalt curbing wouldn't be desirable either. Yeah, it's okay. I mean, if you've tried and you are going to tint it and you're going to do everything, I guess it's probably the contrast that I don't like when I look down that street and see those ribbons of concrete next to that in your diagrams next to that black asphalt. But perhaps as it weathers down and you tint the concrete to suit weathered asphalt, maybe it'll look all right. But this is a question I wanted to ask because I'm still not sure about it.
Okay, any other questions?
Councillor Whetstone.
Go ahead.
I'm looking at Heritage, support the drive. They basically have supported the drive over curbing and tinting, just as Deputy Mayor just suggested there. Maybe that will help. We're not 100% thrilled. Obviously, we'd like to eliminate any and all curbing, but understanding that some of it does drive a purpose, as Mr. Erb just mentioned there as well. However, the opportunity to use temporary curbing in the locations where the barrier curbs are going to be required. If I'm not mistaken, the barrier curbs are not going to be all the way along. They're just going to be where required. I'm not sure where that is actually at this point in time. And we use temporary curbings already. They're up now. Actually, they were brought in the last couple of weeks. Staff's been bringing them in. Would there be an opportunity with if they're really used to stop people driving up onto the trees, as we said there. Why couldn't we just use temporary curbing? And with temporary curbing, there's a little gap in between then. You get a little bit more of that green space look again, right? It's all about the getting rid of the sterile, hard looking surfaces and keeping it as much green space as possible.
Yeah, I can respond to that one too.
Okay,
the curbing that would be abutting the parking areas, so in between the boulevard and the parking, it plays a role in containing the drainage as well, but perhaps more importantly, it will provide us the flexibility in adjusting the grades to better meet AODA compliance into the storefronts. We can adjust that grade of the using the curb to suit a more appropriate profile from the top of the curb to the entrance into the building. So it's not just about protecting the trees. There's a couple other factors that come into play. And for me, like the most important thing from the engineering of it all is that grading. And again, I can't tell you exactly where the barrier is going to be at this time, because now that we have some answers, we can go back to the drawing board a little bit and redo some of our cross sections and that sort of thing, because the road width is going to impact grading as well. But we may have to adjust things here and there to make things work.
Could I have a follow-up question?
That's good.
So it's to Mr. Erb again as well too. So are they going to be in, and you said you're not sure where they're going to be. So are they going to be though in all locations where parking is, or not necessarily?
Yeah, I would propose curbing in all locations. Whether or not we have to go full barrier at all locations, we'd have to look at that as part of the final design.
So if you didn't have to go full barrier, what's the other solution then? If not,
you could potentially step the barrier down a little bit so it wasn't quite as high. Like typical barrier.
That was going to be my next question. So we can reduce the actual barrier if we needed to in spots, right? So
possibly. I would still recommend that it goes in to delineate everything, but you could possibly drop that down to a 3-inch barrier instead of a 6-inch that's there now, or that normal barrier is.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, there's a mover and a seconder for this recommendation on curbing. Any further discussion? All in favor of this recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Street furniture, element number 7. And there's a recommendation here. The council directs staff to bring back a report with street furnishing options. Is there discussion?
Can I comment on this before we move forward?
Yes, please.
I think this is one that gets taken right out of scope.
Okay.
We don't need a report back. We have right now, what we have is our standard metal benches, dedication benches that we use across all of Blue Water. And this is back to a comment that we had earlier, Mr. Mayor, between yourself and myself. And here's an example. So if there's a business that wants to put different seating out front, such as say today, you look at Shop Bike, who has 6 Adirondack chairs. If they would like to do that, they can contact the municipality and we can make the decision then. And therefore there's some flexibility for the storefront owners. And we just continue on with the dedication benches that we have today.
Put them back where they are. You're spending any money on street furniture, for that's what it basically means here, right?
Fair
I would
call.
move that.
Sorry, Mayor Klopp. I
Yes?
would suggest we just, unless there's some specific direction that Dave needs, we don't need to deal with this at all. It's just a recommendation.
Okay, we're fine. We're taking it out though. Be clear on that, as long as everyone's clear.
Do we need a motion to take it out?
I think it would be helpful personally. Yeah, I think it would be helpful, Chandra, if we could.
Yes, so.
And it can be as simple as removing street furnishings from the scope of the project.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay,
I'll pass.
Understood. Thank you.
okay,
I'll pass a motion that we remove street furnishing from the scope of the project.
okay. Whetstone moved. Is there a seconder?
Becker. Counselor Irvin.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of removing street furniture, please say aye.
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 All right.
Okay, thank you. Recommendation number 8 is, I'm going to read here, and it's, is there a mover and a seconder for this to consult wildly and work as best we can, as it says here, direct staff design, maintain a balance. Is there a mover or seconder?
Counselor Walden would move.
Thank you.
Vandenberg.
Vandenberg seconds.
Comment from Whetstone.
Yep.
So I think what I'm reading here is that we've already discussed the road width. And there's already been a motion made on that. And the quantity of the parking spaces, we've already made a motion on that. So this is more or less putting the tree canopy back in based on those other 2 items that have already been approved. Am I reading this correctly? Or I'm asking Dave Kester, is that correct? Is that what he's looking for?
That's correct, yes.
Now, I do have a comment regarding the tree canopy on this specifically, and it just came today, a thought as we were talking about here. I believe, Mr. Cowdice, he said that there'd be a couple trees that would have to be removed that are already on their way in to start with. Then there's a couple that they would have to be taken out that may not be dead, that they might be all right. Is there an opportunity to spade those trees, replant them someplace else, such as in Klingreger Park, for when they're needed?
For you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we can look at that. Once a tree gets a certain size, it's no longer.
Understood, Ron.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But we can certainly look at that. And put them in Klingreger Park. That makes a lot of sense.
Obviously, I get that. If it's got too big, you can't do it. I understand that. See, I'm talking smaller ones, hopefully here, right? So, okay, thanks, Ron.
Okay, any further questions? If not, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the recommendation number 8, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Buried hydro, element number 9. Dave, you must have some sheets on this, a little more to talk about this, or is it all on this page here?
So the majority of information is on the page. If there are any questions specific to this, I would gladly take them. The one thing that I did, that there was a question that was asked with respect to completing the design of the project. So just for council's information, I did speak with Hydro One. If it were just to complete the design, it was $17,500 just to do the detailed design. The other piece was that there was discussion on is there a possibility to install now the duct work for installation of the infrastructure at a later point. And I would suggest that, yes, there is a possibility. The only thing that I would preface that comment with is that if their code changes or their design standards change, then what's installed may not be appropriate.
Okay.
So that's the only thing that I would preface that comment with, is that depending on the timeline, that it may not be suitable if it's down the road. And I mean, electrical code changes at any given point. It could be, you know, in a year from now, it could be in 5 years. It may not change at all.
Oh, okay. No, it's good to get that clarified. Okay, councilors, this is I think we've had a lot of discussion about it, but we need to make some decisions. So, Dave, I guess where are we at? Councilors, any discussion on the pros and cons of burying? Do we need to have that discussion, or do we really understand that enough that we really just, the issue is about the cost and about how it would be paid if it could work? Is that, can I open that up that way and we'll go from there, or what? I open it to councilors' discussion here.
Sure, Councillor Whetstone, if I may, I might as well start the discussion on it. So as we know, and I mean, you'd have to have not read all the emails over the last 2 or 3 months of feedback to not recognize that this is, if not the first, maybe the second most item to be included in the project. So from that standpoint, and it falls on two items. It's for, or maybe 3 or more, to be honest. It comes into play with the tree canopy. In order to, the tree canopy, which we just approved putting in, you cannot have a tree canopy with hydro wires. That's the reason why we don't have any trees today, is part of the issue down on Main Street, why they're dying, because they have to be cut into those nice V shapes that always are cut for the hydro wires all the time. So you can't have the existing tree canopy. We've agreed to put the tree canopy back in as part of the project. It also does add from a heritage perspective. If you look back as to the drawings or the pictures that were part of the PAT committee from the very beginning, this is going back years ago now, they had an example of what they were looking for to try to put back into play for the future of the downtown to do that. So those are the two main drivers of that, most definitely. And there's also, I get it, there's also a cost to do it. There's also future costs too for savings from a hydro perspective for Hydro One, which I'm not saying that they have recognized that, but there is some savings there from outages, those type of things on there. But this is the most sought after item on the list at this point in time for this project. For us to not include it, we would be remiss. And I would go as far as to say is that you would not get any feedback on any projects from most people going forward if you do not include it, because the whole point of public engagement is to see what the public wants from at least putting it into play. The costing is a different discussion. I understand that. But we would be remiss, and we would be very difficult to try to tell people is, yeah, we didn't include this, but we want you to respond on future items. Why would they?
Okay. Any other comments on the general issue of burying or not burying, councilors? I'll go at it from this way. Okay, Dave, I guess I think every councilor and myself included, we've all agreed there's a good argument to bury the line, and as has been pointed out even by many residents over the years, it's the costing of it. And so what have you? There's been a whole bunch of numbers batted around the last few days. Dave, what is your estimate? You know, taking out this and that, and what is the bottom line number that you've got right now in the total cost of this project with
Yeah.
regard to?
So if we can go down to the financial impact statement, it is identified in there where I've broken down kind of what it works out to be, the cost. So I've included in here for discussion purposes because it was mentioned with respect to area rating, and information for anybody that would want to see it. But further down, if we could go down, actually a little bit further, there is in this text here, right there, basically identifies financially how the project breaks down with respect to money allocated in the project, and then with respect to where the shortfall comes with respect to hydro. So in addition, there's a $413,000 cost for the adding of the hydro, and I will also comment that there is the additional segment of sidewalk on Charles Street to the tune of about $14,000. That's included in that $413,000. So with between what's budgeted and the cost of the project, including buried hydro, the difference gets us to that $413,000. And then I've included as well in the financial impact as well, different options for funding the project. So if there's any questions on this, I can answer it as well. I know our treasurer is with us tonight as well, and she and I have had fairly extensive conversations on this, and if there's anything that needs clarification, I'm sure she can provide great assistance as she always does as well.
Okay, so this is the 413, which includes the paving of approximately $13,000. Is that right?
It includes the sidewalk extensions on Charles Street.
Sidewalk, sidewalk, which is what was the number again?
About 14,000. Actually, if you scroll up, it's included in that. Yeah, it's 14,400.
Okay, but that was without that. Okay, so it should be included. So there's about the real number we're talking about to get the job done. We're digging up the ground, and all taxpayers are involved in this. So it is a lot of money. So it's $413,000
additional to what was budgeted as part of 2021's budget for this entire project.
And if council agrees to the extension, then it has to be accounted for somewhere in the budget, right? So, okay, councilors, that's I'm looking for some discussion here on what you'd like to do. If you'd like.
I have a question first that I just need clarification on, if I could, and I meant to ask that as part of this just before we got into this. So, and help me out if I'm wrong here. When we have new subdivisions going in, I guess this is why I'm asking the question. We have new subdivisions going in. Part of our, I'm going to call our standard or requirements for planning is that especially in our hamlets or in our villages, I guess, is more appropriate, that we require the hydro wires to be buried. Is that correct? Does anybody know?
So it's not a requirement of all subdivisions.
My understanding it is for for Zurich, Hensel, and Bayfield. Is that correct?
That has been standard practice. Correct.
Okay, I just wasn't sure. Okay, just wanted to make sure because I don't want to see us going against our own standard practices here. That's all. So.
Yeah. Oh, okay, but who pays for that?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Well, that was my question. Who pays for burying the hydro wires?
That is
in a new subdivision.
That is
development charges.
That is actually the developer's expense.
Right.
That's right.
And we're the developer in this case.
Well, yeah, I guess. Councillors, we're on the main street here on this issue. And let's keep that at hand at the end of the day here. If I may say that,
I have a question then, Mayor.
Councillor Vandenberg.
And it's just for clarity to Dave then. So the gas tax of, let's say, 443, that is money that will be coming to this municipality that's not spoken for. Is that right with reading that?
In I was going to say, in my layman's terms, yes, but perhaps it may be more appropriate for Ann to respond to that.
Yes, so we got notification of this just like last month. I think it was included in one of the recent consent agendas. We got notification. Normally we would get gas tax in a roundabout amount of about 216,000, but for 2021 we're getting a top up, which takes us up to the 443.87, which, you know, in my mind, that like it was searching, trying to figure out some way to cover all these costs, and then Dave gets it down to 413, and I have this 443, and I'm thinking, whoa, like at least I can see that we can possibly pay for it, depending on how council wants to address it.
Right. So it's a little bonus right now for us, depending where we spend it. So, and I think last summer we took gas tax money out of the airport bridge, or B35, whatever you want to call it, and brought it over to Bayfield Main Street as part of the project. Am I right?
Yes. Yeah. There was like over $1 million in gas tax and interest. I think in the neighborhood of $1,022,000 or something that we have already accounted for costs towards this project.
Okay. And I'm just going to throw this out to councillors then. I think we do need to bury the lines, and I know we have to fund it somehow. And there's been lots of discussion. I don't think we should be going with a them or us versus them mentality. I know Mr. Councillor Harris spoke about that a lot earlier in our meeting. We've got other projects coming down the pipe in Zurich and Hensel. And I hate using this term sometimes, but yeah, we got to work together on all our projects and not be isolating ourselves. And there could be rural areas and property owners who say, yeah, well, I'm not going to Bayfield. I don't, I'm not supporting Bayfield with my money and buying things there. And that could be said in other parts of Blue Water. But this isn't for today, and it's not for tomorrow. This is for the next 120 years that we're talking about. And I think that's the key, not knowing where this municipality will look like 100 years from now, where people in Ontario are going to be living. Certainly this last 18 months has opened up a lot of eyes, and people are going, gee whiz, maybe we don't have to work at a job site. We can work from home, and maybe home for a lot of people down the road might be Blue Water. And we're having discussions about planning and a sub-plan or whatever you call it in Bayfield too. So I'm just saying it out to the other councillors. I think this is something we've got to do. And it's just a matter of coming up with the money. And I'm seeing this gas tax money of 443, and maybe that's where we go. But knowing too that we've got other projects down the road, and we collectively better support those projects as well. So that's my soapbox. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, as a ward councillor for the Lakeshore, I think Councillor Vandenberg should know that the two wards would contribute half the cost of this endeavor from residential taxes. I, for one, cannot support it. I heard Councillor Walden say earlier that this is not a need, it's a want. It's not a necessity, it's a luxury. It's a special service, and it's a special service for only one ward. And I'll make a motion that burying the hydro wires in Bayfield is taken out of the project.
Okay, I have a motion, so I'm bound by that. Is there a seconder for his motion? Is there a seconder for his motion?
Councillor Becker will second it for discussion.
Okay, thank you. For discussion, councilors?
I'll ask for a recorded vote, Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Okay. Councilors, the discussion on the motion.
Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor.
Yep.
I'm not going to support the motion. I agreed with Councillor Vandenberg and Councillor Harris about being one municipality. As you know, Mr. Mayor, from the county, that there is some planned construction on the Zurich Hensel Road, and that road's going to be redone. And the main streets of Zurich are part of that road, and the main street of Hensel is part of that road. So down the road, there's going to be other main streets and other projects that we're going to need to support and do. And we're not going to treat them any different than we're going to treat this one. They're all going to be part of municipal infrastructure that we're responsible for. So it's purely a decision of council. I understand that. But I'm not going to support the motion at this time. I think there are options that we need to explore before that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I make a comment?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, technically speaking, I agree with the concept of burying the hydro lines. I certainly don't want to ask our residents to pay another 6% tax to finance this additional want. Having said that, there's an opportunity here with this gas tax fund, and the entire municipality has already put a number of millions of dollars towards the project. We support the project. Everybody has supported it. And one of the reasons I voted to have the gas tax previously put towards this project is to get it completed. The longer we leave it, the more it will cost us. And we have, like Councillor Vandenberg pointed out, we have many, many projects that we're going to need help as a group, and we have as a group supported the Bayfield project. So I can't support the motion of taking this out. I don't want to spend the money, but we have to get it done. That's my opinion, sir.
Okay. Any other councilors' comments for or against the motion?
Councillor Whetstone.
Go ahead.
So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Obviously, I'm not in support of the motion for various reasons that have already been spoken on, that we are one on this, and we will be, and we have in the past supported multiple projects that we could have even looked at from an area rating standpoint, but we are one, and it was never brought up from an area rating standpoint on all those other projects that, and I'm not going to get into listing them. And it's a very slippery slope if we go down the path of looking at it only being from one ward pays for this, one ward pays for that. That's not being together. And in the Lakeshore, yes, I understand that. And if you look where the boundaries of Bayfield are, they are within Stanley West, and a good majority of the people in Stanley West consider themselves Bayfield.
Okay. Good discussion all the way around. Any other comments before as I normally do, I try to get all the councilors who wish to speak it, and then you can speak in. Okay.
Sorry, if I could finish, I had one more point that I wanted to make. I just had to take a sip of water there because I was getting a little dry. Sorry, more than anything else. A couple of years ago, when this was brought up, there was some quick research that was done, and I'll say I did it on my own, so I'll give it. You can take it for face value. But I did ask as property values, what that brings to Blue Water from having Bayfield.
Counselor, I think we all pay taxes, if I may.
Absolutely, totally agree.
I think the points taken about that actually to me gets us discussing stuff we don't need to discuss.
No, and it wasn't about the value of your property tax. It's actually the value of your house.
Okay, go ahead.
So when the discussion was brought up at that point in time, there was some quick research that was done, and it was asked of real estate agents. If Bayfield didn't exist, which let's face it, the main street is what Bayfield is. That's what brings people here, right? The charm around the rest of it is there as well too. 15 to 20% more of the value of the houses are due to that main street. Okay. It will bring more people. It's the economic driver of all of Blue Water in Huron County from a tourism perspective. So it does justice. And this making us even more different will even drive more of that coming down the road. We'll get more people, we'll get more taxation. We'll be able to do more of those things that we want to do in all the other places then as well too.
Okay, thank you. I won't be supporting the motion. I think not a surprise, but for a lot of the arguments were just stated, been trying to walk the walk about we're all together. It is a lot of money, but the up and down of taking it out, I'm not going to be supporting. I think that there's still, though, we need to work on how we continue to replenish that money. But we can have that discussion if this motion fails. We will probably have that discussion because we made a decision we're going to do it. So then it's how we work the payment. So everybody feels, to keep the taxes low. But first, it's got to decide if it carries or not. So I understand there's going to be a recorded vote. Is there anybody else who want to comment for or against the motion? I'm not hearing any. Chandra, are you prepared? I'm going to call the question then. Chandra, it's a recorded vote, so you have a process. Would you please do that process? And this is the motion that says we're taking out the burying of the cable.
That it be removed from the project.
Not the money, just taking it out. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Councillor Becker,
I support the motion.
Councillor Harris,
Against.
Deputy Mayor Ferguson,
Against.
Mayor Klopp,
Against.
Councillor Laporte, Councillor Laporte. Okay, Councillor Vandenberg.
Do not support.
Thank you.
You do support Councillor Vandenberg?
No, I do not support the motion.
Councillor Walden,
I do not support the motion.
Councillor Whetstone,
Do not support.
Councillor Irvin,
Support.
and I will try Councillor Laporte one more time. Okay. I do not have a vote from Councillor Laporte, but the motion does not carry.
Okay. All right. So it's, I take it the discussion is it's going to be buried. But is there discussion on how we, all our taxpayers, that we can keep in mind the cost for it, and also we want to make sure we have money for other projects. Is there any motion about how we would do it?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
That's the deputy mayor, and I want to look at the option there that the treasurer has talked about and said that we have in the past used the gas tax to bridge finance, and I think that it would be an appropriate use of that money this year to bridge fund this project. And when I say bridge fund, I'd like to see it repaid, and it would be repaid from the levy, but I would repay it at the same rate that we're using the $85,000 contribution that we make every year now. So it's going to take us 5 years and a bit to pay for that. 5 years, a good 5 years, but you know what, before we get the final bill on this, it's gonna be 2 years from now anyway. So we're gonna be well on the way if we continue that $85,000 a year contribution towards the main street that we're making now. It's doesn't change the tax rate at all and doesn't increase that at all and just continues as it goes. As you say, it's not new money, it's old money. We'll continue it on until that bridge financing and the gas tax is paid back to the municipality.
I would support that motion or second it.
Okay, there was a motion and a seconder. Deputy Mayor made the motion. There's a seconder on the process to pay for getting it buried. Councilors, discussion.
Mr. Mayor, may I make a comment?
Yes, you can. I want comment.
I would like to thank the deputy mayor because that was kind of my thought process. And in the back of my mind as well is when we put the last gas tax towards this project, I thought, oh, great, we're going to achieve this for the municipality and for Bayfield as one. And then it didn't happen. And I'm extremely concerned that the longer we postpone this, the costs are going to grow exponentially. They simply are. So we need to get serious and get this on, and we'll need to share as a group, like Councillor Vandenberg said, and other projects very soon. So I would support this.
Okay. It says my internet is unstable. Maybe I'm having the same trouble as my counselor in Zurich here. So if I pass out here, not literally, I'm not dodging the issue here. Okay. Any other counselors on the motion? I totally, I'm going to support it. It makes sense. I always talk also about, we try to have to remember the bills have to be paid, and we need to keep that in mind, and the balance of all the taxpayers. We all have all bills too. So I'm going to support this motion.
Can I clarify the motion, Councilor?
Sure.
Mayor Clark?
What is
So that we are going to bury the hydro and fund it through gas tax and continue with replenishing the reserves every year in the amount of 85,000.
Till the 440, well, there's 413 needed, but the intent is that there's going to be an ending to the 85,000. So the motion should read, so future councils, if when there's other people here in whatever 3-4 years, they know that there's an ending, and more important, the clerk or the treasurer then goes to the council and says, sorry, this is now done. It's paid off, and that money now is it can be taken off the tax rate, which is 85,000, which is right now a little over 1%, just for future councils. So how would you write that up? Is it some wording to say that it will be replenished, the 413,000, and when so is it say, why don't we just say 5 years, because that's gonna get it pretty darn close, and it's all going back to our own people. It's going into a reserve. It's not disappearing in Paul Klopp's bank account, just for all name me. So is that, why don't we just say that we will continue with the 85,000 that was already in the budget for another 5 years to replenish money back into, as you said, the reserve. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can we get a recorded vote on that, please?
Oh, okay. Are we ready to call the vote? Okay, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor of the, oh, sorry, Chandra,
Yes.
you have a process. Go
That's my
ahead.
part.
Oh, yes, Deputy Mayor laughed because I forgot. Gotcha. You can chair next time.
Okay. So to reiterate, the motion is that council directs staff to include burying hydro on Bayfield Main Street within the project extents, and that it be funded with the gas tax, and that $85,000 as allocated annually in previous budgets continues to be allocated annually over a period of 5 years to replenish the reserves and funds to complete the burying of the hydro.
Okay, I think
Okay.
I think the
All right.
intent there is that, would that satisfy our treasurer when she's, or she or someone else, I hope it's still her, knows that she has it, can manage that, and also that there's an ending date, so she has money to send back to tell taxpayers. Is that okay with her?
Yes, And now we'll just verify that it meets the reserve policies that we passed earlier this year.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it does, but I want to put that provision out there that we make sure. The other thing is too, that when we originally started the Bayfield Main Street project, the 85,000 was for 4 years. And then I came back to the council the following year and said, you know, we based it on what we've constantly done. So we've continued to put that in there. But at any point, council was able to say, no, stop it or continue it as you wish.
But so the motion though is definitely, if nobody says anything, you know where there is an end.
It would go for the 5 years for sure.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you though for always reminding council can change their votes at some point. Thank you. And when it comes to budget. Okay, are we ready for the question, councilors? Hearing none more questions, we're going to call the question. Chandra, you
Yes.
have the process.
Okay, Councillor Walden,
For,
Councillor Whetstone,
Support.
Councillor Vandenberg,
Support.
Councillor Laporte, Councillor Irvin,
Opposed.
Mayor Klopp,
For,
Councillor Becker,
Opposed.
Councillor Harris,
Or
and Deputy Mayor Ferguson.
Support.
That motion carries.
okay, thank you, councilors. We had good discussion. It's an important topic, and I'm glad we could do that discussion. I think it shows that we are all as one. It's not how we individually voted. It's about the good consensus and good discussion. And I thank you all as the chair for that, for that, and for our community. Going forward now, what is the next one, Councillor? Or sorry, Dave. I'll let you come back and have the lead here a little bit. We're on number.
Sorry, can
10.
everybody hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah,
You're
okay,
on
my
10.
apologies. I have a 1-year-old that thinks we're being too loud.
Hold on. Welcome to Zoom.
Yeah. I was trying to do it on headphones and it's not working anyway. So then the next one is that we're on is recommendation number 10. And that's with respect to the work timelines.
And keep in mind, we're going to try to follow this, but everybody has to realize things can happen. But we got to have a chance to play with this.
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you.
seconded by Councillor Walden.
Okay. Unless someone can play Mother Nature, I think we recognize at least it's an effort to work with people, and you're going to work with them in between. So I'm going to call the question. Is everyone in favor of this recommendation?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Hearing none, the motion carries. Crosswalks. Not include the crosswalks.
Move the recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
Councilor Harris.
It's pretty straightforward. I'm going to call the question, but please, Counselor, if I don't see you all, jump in. As I said earlier at the beginning, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Number 12. And this is about extending the Main Street North.
So sorry, just to clarify, this is to identify the project limits to virtual high school and to extend the sidewalks on Charles.
Okay, is there a mover for this?
So
motion?
move, Councillor Walden.
Is there a seconder for discussion?
Whetstone.
Thank you. Everyone's clear on this is basically this is basically what has always been in the study area, except for adding the sidewalk. If you recall that discussion earlier this evening or over the last few weeks. So this is now clarifying that we're staying within the study area that has always been there, but extending the sidewalk only. Any questions, comments?
Councillor Whetstone has a question, if I could, please, Mr. Mayor. So yeah, it's related to the project extents, and this is more from comments that came out of the Heritage meeting, if I could. And so one of the discussions on there, and maybe we can get some clarification, is that they actually supported the project extends to the length of the buildings in the commercial core. I assumed the commercial core, we assumed that the commercial core is the same as what the study has always been. My understanding is that there is a area or map or something that designates what that commercial core is. I don't know, and we didn't know at that time what that actually was, thus the reason for the language when we said the commercial core. Does anybody have a better understanding on that, Dave, yourself? What that actually is? Is that the study area?
And perhaps Kelly could speak to this as well, but my understanding is that the project extents basically ended, let's say at virtual high school, and they had had ended at basically, let's say the throat or the end of the radius on Charles Street. And so as far as the extent of the commercial core as defined through what you're describing, I'm not certain on what that may be. But as I said, that those were the project extents that were identified initially as part of this project when it was like at its first, well, depends on who you talk to, but its first inception in 2016 with an actual conceptual design drawing circulated to council.
Okay, so if I have further question, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
So if I look at the recommendation, so you're basically taking any property that is commercially zoned, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, yes.
Okay, so that would assume that that would tie into the commercial core, I would assume then as well too. So okay, so anything that is zoned commercially right now is included in this. Just trying to make sure I totally understand
That's
the
my
recommendation.
understanding.
I
don't know if by chance, and I know that that Mike Rolfe is on. I don't know if he would know that off the top of his head, for that matter, because I don't want to state something that's not factual or correct.
Thank you.
Good evening, council. Yes, through your worship. Dave was correct that the after the Heritage Advisory Committee meeting, I did find that map. It can be found through our website, and yeah, there is a commercial area within the designated area, and the extent would be the westerly limits of Virtual High School and down Charles Street to the end of that building, as indicated by Councillor Whetstone.
Okay, so they're one of the same then we're talking about then. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for that.
All right,
No
thank you.
further questions.
All right. We have a mover or seconder for the defining the area that is going to be worked on, and I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the motion, the recommendation.
Aye.
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 None opposed, the motion carries. Street lighting, the council approves the two-zone lighting approach. Is there a mover or seconder for this?
I'll move it for conversation, yes.
Okay, seconder,
Councillor Irvin.
thank you. Questions, comments?
Mr. Mayor, yes, I had a question. I guess to BM Ross, that the street light, not the pedestrian one, but the taller street light, is that dark sky compliant?
In the daytime.
Yeah, I'll maybe let Ron speak to that.
Yes, it is dark sky compliant. It directs the light downwards onto the street with a lens and a reflector.
Okay, I just thought with that lens, it may have flooded the area rather than directing it down. And how tall are those? Do we have an idea of how high those standards will be?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the standard height is a function of the width of the street and the effectiveness of the luminaire. So we'll be working with the engineers, but generally they would be in the 18 to 20 foot range. The higher the light is, the wider the pole spacing can be, but it then becomes out of scale with the scale of the street.
Exactly. Okay. Good. Thank you.
All right.
I have a question, Mayor, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, and was, I think, brought up earlier, I'm also looking at the heritage advice again. So pedestrian lighting covers, they're gonna be green then, but I'm just wondering from Councillor Whetstone about the actual street lights then. Do you want those then green as well? I don't see that.
Yeah, so if I could answer that, Mr. Mayor. So yeah, maybe it's not worded exactly as it should be on there. So this was a recommendation that we currently have a heritage green light for all, and so it would be all light standards is what it would be in there. Thank you for the clarification, Councillor Vandenberg.
All right, so we in going to Ron then, I guess, we can do the green lights then, like the poles, I mean?
Ron?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure what the material of the poles will be at this point. There's a wide range of options, including metal poles and spun concrete type poles, but all of them can be in a green color.
Okay. So, and if I may, this is more the fixtures themselves. I think is what the green was referring to. I guess there was really no discussion on the poles themselves, but obviously as heritage as possible, Ron, right, when it comes to that. So at the same time, if I may, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So right or wrong, currently today, and that's not a question, I'm sorry, it's a statement, right or wrong. Currently today, we have an ambiance that people love downtown because there's very little lighting that is happening in the summertime. Maybe because most of the lights are out, or we don't have enough lights. I'm going to say most of the lights are out most of the time. Let's call it that way. I would really, really like to be able, I do know at the corners, there are some safety concerns that we have to meet, obviously, right? From a standards for cars, all that, totally understand that. I would like us to really look at this and reduce the amount of lights as much as possible to continue with that ambiance. What we don't want is all of a sudden this going the complete direction and it looks like a runway, being lit up like a runway. I think, Ron, you kind of know where I'm getting at with that, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'm not wording it properly, but I think you understand, obviously. So I think that's something in final design we really need to take a look at. And maybe there's opportunity to reduce some costs by not putting in as many pedestrian lighting as well. Maybe, I don't know, that's something to look at.
Okay, Ron is taking notes, and I'm working on the process, and we've all heard it, and we're not disagreeing. So
Can I make a comment on that, please, Mayor?
Please go ahead.
I'm looking at it from my previous job, and I hate to see it. And I get it. You don't want as many lights, but at the same time, you have to look at it as a safety aspect. And if it's if the tree canopy is hindering the illumination of the lighting, then that's not ideal. You also want to create a safe area for people to walk. You want to also have eyes for when we do get the police in the area, just to help them out to look down buildings. If it's 1 o'clock in the morning, if they're looking for someone as well. So there's that part as well. So if we can just keep that in mind.
Good comments. I think Ron also wrote them down.
And I think that's the beauty of the two-stage lighting that we have, where we're not just doing straight poles, regular hydro poles at the 18 feet or whatever it was that we just heard. We're having the two-stage lighting where the pedestrian lighting will be lower to the ground, and it may not be interfered then by the tree canopies. But valid points, Councillor Vandenberg, for sure.
Okay. Any other questions? I'm going to call the question. Hearing none, I'm going to call the question. Recommendation number 13, approve the two-zone lighting approach. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Bump outs. Recommendation, council approves the current design for bump outs for the tree protection and pedestrian safety. We've had a number of discussions, but Dale is always up for more. I think he's always prepared. So is there anyone wishing to need a mover and a seconder for this, and of course discussion?
So moved, Counselor Walden.
Seconder. Seconder, please.
Vandenberg.
Councillor Vandenberg. Discussion, anyone on this?
Councillor Whetstone.
Go ahead.
So this is one area where the bump outs were not supported by the historical or the Heritage Society. Understanding the two items that were listed there from a safety perspective, and what was the other one, sir? I'm just trying to look at protection, tree protection. If the bump outs were removed, they would then, we don't have bump outs today, and we don't have an issue with pedestrian safety. By adding them in, the road width is not changing. I don't see where pedestrian safety is being hindered on this whatsoever, to be honest. From tree protection, I can somewhat understand that, but you could still you could push them back to what the proper edge of the road is compared to the rest of the road, and still protect a potential tree that would go in there, or not put a tree in there based on the fact that you're on a corner and you got to be able to see from a perspective. So I don't support the bump outs at this time based on the two items that are part of the design team's design.
I'd like to know why they've been put in. Obviously they stated it, but could you reiterate why I should?
Agree.
So yes, and either Dale or Dale can comment on this as well. But yeah, so it is something that has been included for both the tree protection as well as pedestrian safety. And unfortunately, the reality is, and although appreciated about the comment that there has been there's been no incidences with respect to pedestrians at this time. So it's both vehicular and pedestrian safety as well, for that matter. But the unfortunate reality is that if there were an incident that were to take place and it were not included, the municipality would be found, in all likelihood, would be found guilty because the effort was not made to include that safety component as part of the design.
If you have an old car and it hasn't got a seat belt, that's how it goes. But if there's an option to put the seat belt in, somebody could be liable if you didn't do it, kind of type thing. I look at it.
A follow-up, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
So are you telling me this is a requirement by a standard then that must be done?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that well, and again, Dale can speak to this, but I know that from a safety perspective, it is an acknowledged practice that there is identified rationale to including an item of this nature.
Yeah, and I can speak further to that, David. Typically, the safety concerns comes to play at the intersections, like at Charles and Catherine as an example. Because you have stop control situation at Catherine and Charles coming onto Main Street, you have a sightline issue there that you need to maintain so that those cars who are stopped at the intersections are able to see a clear path or clear sight line to cars and pedestrians. So typically you would provide some kind of zone, whether it's painted or landscaped or a bump out, in this case, at the intersections to ensure that those sight lines are provided. Whether or not they're there now, it is a guideline which we typically apply to most intersection work.
Okay. Deputy Mayor, did you have a comment?
Mr. Mayor, you could probably help me out, or maybe Councilor Laporte if he's on there. The county was going to put a bump out in front of the medical center in Zurich, and I believe they took it out and they put that crosswalk in there. And because they didn't want to plow there in the wintertime and go through town and clip it with the plow. So Yeah, we don't have to have them. I would take them out. I mean, I understand that there is potentially some liability issue if something happens. There's a liability issue on everything we do. So I'm not worried about that. But do you know if they took that out there? Do you recall?
No, sorry, I really,
Yeah, you go by it every day and we don't know. That's.
yeah, I don't know. Sorry.
So I can speak to that. There is no bump out there. And the methodology that was used to control the traffic in that situation was through the use of the signalized intersection.
In,
plan is a bump out.
In Dashwood, they put bump outs, correct? When they redid their corners there? Would have those classes bump outs in Dashwood on the Brunson and on the other side of on the South Huron side? Dave, do you?
I don't know that. I don't drive by that one every single day.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a county mistake.
That was a county mistake. Okay.
Same as in Shepka, they did the same thing. Another mistake.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but that is a bump out. Would Councillor Becker, thank you for jumping in. Okay.
I don't know. Ron, would you maybe want to chime in on this?
Yeah, because now we're burying the hydro, the bump outs might serve as a location where transformers would be placed. And the hydro lines might be buried under the parking zones rather than under the area where the trees are intended to be planted. We have a lot of transformers to go in. And other communities, I was just in Port Stanley looking at how they did their hydro bury in their downtown. And they actually wrapped the transformers with heritage wrapping. So they took heritage photographs of the town and wrapped the transformers so they become an interesting feature as you walk along the street. But they've tried to move them closer to the parking zones to allow for more room for the tree roots to be placed. So I think the design team, we've heard the concern about bump outs. We have narrowed them as much as we could, but once we start looking at the hydro installation and where all the facility is going to go, if we don't have the bump outs, it may compromise other areas of the design.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, it's some valid points from Ron there on that, because now we've made a decision, right, to bury the hydro wires, which does maybe change things slightly into this area. Not to delay any things, but is this something that we could, not saying delay it, but finalize whether they're in or out based on now that we've made that decision? I'm just trying to think I'd really love to see them gone, but at the same time, what Ron's suggesting is maybe they serve a spot for a location for some of these transformers that instead would be right beside the sidewalks or the pathways, which may not be as appealing walking by potentially as well. So it does tweak a little bit different thought process on me now, based on that we're burying the hydro wires.
Council, the motion is council approves the current design for bump outs for tree protection and pedestrian safety. If we vote for the recommendation, there's going to be discussion with on the where the transformers go, correct? I'm hearing that. So councilors are what do you call the question, see where it goes, or?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Opposed.
I'm going to call it the recommendation is carried. And though keep in mind now to everyone that's listening and whatever, it's been reported that they're going to be looking at them in the design process when it comes to transformers. So let them do their job, and we can, again, we're always going to have chances to look at some of these small things. But for right now, they need to know that they've minimized them and the vote is carried. Infiltration basin, number 15. Accommodate wider road. Where are we going on this one?
Move the recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Harris will second it.
Okay, thank you. Discussion?
Councillor Whetstone,
Yes.
on this particular one. And forgive me, I may may have a few questions on this one, but although Mr. Erb did answer some of them in his presentation at the beginning.
Yep.
So I think what you said, Dale, if I may, is that 100% of the stormwater or the rain does not go through these, correct? It's that first downpour, I guess, for my terminology, that would be captured.
That would be correct. There typically would be an overflow put in the rain gardens to allow anything that the rain garden can handle to discharge directly to the storm sewer.
Okay, so then will all the surface water then be directed into these retention gardens then, or just?
Most of it will, is what I'm going to say. We probably won't be able to get everything into them.
Yeah, so we're talking 80%, Dale, or
yeah,
I'm not holding it to you. I'm not going to go measure it. By
the plan would be to try and direct as much as we can to the rain gardens.
Okay, so we're hoping somewhere around 80%. That's what I call as a majority, right? For when it comes to something like this. So, and then what's not treated just goes where?
Well, the majority will have that initial flush will be treated through the rain gardens. And then as part of your storm sewer system, you also have sumps in the structures themselves, which add to collect sediment and debris inside them. And then periodically the municipality would clean those structures out so that collection doesn't then get washed out into the lake. So there's almost like a storage area inside a catch basin.
So the stormwater, does the stormwater then go into the Delvin drain, or where does it end up going?
It heads down to Catherine.
Down Catherine.
Yes.
Okay.
To the outlet. Yeah.
Yep. Understood. Okay. I was just, again, I'm looking at it. It's a $30,000, I think, of what I saw on the breakdown there, about a $30,000 adder. I'm trying to look at the benefit of it, obviously, as well, too. We are a blue community, or green, whatever you want to call it, trying to make sure that we're getting our biggest bang for our buck on these at the same time, but also limiting. How many of these do we have? Just the 4 that are going to be going in, right?
Honestly, I think there might be 6.
6?
We have it down to now.
Okay. And how big are these? I saw the drawings. It's just, I in all honesty, I can't visualize it. I got to be honest.
Yeah, the footprint is different at pretty much all the locations. Measurement wise, you're probably talking, as small as 8 feet by 8 feet, and as big as we have one off the side street on Charles that's probably 2 by 4 meters, something like that. So,
okay.
So it does vary.
Okay. Just trying to understand it more from a purpose and relating it to cost at the same time.
And part of the history behind them is the blue flag designation, and this goes back again to the PAT committee that you brought up earlier, Mr. Whetstone.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of things that came out of the design that were part of that committee.
So in the original one, like 3 meetings ago, I'll just call it 3. Did you say there was more along the street?
They were bigger, and I think we were able to pull one out of the design, the redesign. Again, that'll be refined through the final design process.
Right now, you're looking at 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one more question, and if I could, and I'm not sure if Mr. will be able to answer the not. I'm not sure if he's familiar with it, but he probably is. So we have, and I don't want to call them rain gardens because that's a little bit, I find that's a little bit different. So are these similar to what Pioneer Park has put in place, which they are classing as a rain garden? Or, those are down in a little bit, dug in a little bit deeper. So is that the similar approach as to what these are, or are these different, and how do they differ from a functioning standpoint?
Very similar. They're just the grading for the ones that were put in at Pioneer Park is just different, given the fact that it's really a ditch outlet that we're discharging into. So just different configuration. We still have the same type of media in those rain gardens at Pioneer Park that we would have on Main Street.
So they're supposed to be doing the same approach basically then. So my only concern is that I've heard comments that they're sometimes not real eye appealing. you know, which I get that. They're not flower gardens. There are a certain type of vegetation that gets put in there that can handle that as well too. So, okay, that's the questions I have. Thank you.
Okay. So,
Mr. Mayor,
yes,
I had one, I mean, actually, I know the value of these and I know what they've done down there at Pioneer Park, and they may not get all the maintenance or all of the care sometimes that they will take. But the environmental benefit is documented and is there. And actually on the main street, rather than count them as a liability or something that we have to look after, we should celebrate them. We should put something out there and tell the people what they're doing, and you know, draw attention to them, and say that we're being environmentally conscious. So I think there's a great story here to tell, to help educate people and sell them on the value of them.
Well, from a Blue Bayfield perspective, definitely, Deputy Mayor.
all right. So we had a mover and a seconder, correct, Chandra? Thank you. We're ready to call the question that we accept the current design for infiltration basins. I want to call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Are we done?
We are.
15 was the last one, Dave?
There's a number 16 as
I
as
don't have
well.
it in my sheet. I don't know why.
It's on the first page of Dave's report.
Yeah, I don't have a written report.
It's on the screen.
So it's on the screen.
Yeah, I know, but I don't have you didn't have I've been following you on the printed page.
No, and my apologies. There wasn't a write-up on this one because it wasn't a specific design element component.
Okay, very good. So you can explain what that means?
But it's on the first page.
Yeah, number 16. That's
Oh,
number motion, right?
Yeah, so item 16 is that council direct staff to tender the Bayfield Main Street revitalization project as soon as practical.
As soon as practical. Okay, is there a mover or a seconder for this motion?
Councillor Harris.
Thank you.
Councillor Whetstone.
I heard two people. Who was it?
Whetstone.
Okay. I apologize, but I did hear two voices. I couldn't distinguish them. A mover, a seconder, and we all understand as councilors what this means. Any clarification anyone wants? Hearing none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Going back to my agenda sheet. It says confirmatory bylaw. But before I do that, if I would indulge, I'd like to thank council over the past number of years. Some of you have been on and off this since a long time. And so I thank you, but to all councilors, you've had this has been a lot of work, and to do it in Zoom is just one step more frustrating, to say the least, but we got through it. And that says something to all of council, but I'd also like to thank the staff, and I'd like to thank BM Ross and your work. And Ron, welcome. You definitely, I think, helped us all move this along, and clearly you're not done yet, and there's some twigging, etc. So we look forward to that. And at that point, is there any other councilors' comments? If not, I'm going to ask for a confirmatory bylaw.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Just echo your comments. People probably don't realize the tremendous amount of work that has gone into this plan behind the scenes. All the work. Holy cow! Just answering my emails was a lot of work, and I do have to thank staff, and I know it takes a lot of time, and it's a big project and a lot of effort, but in the end they come through for us. So I think that's great. Also, BM Ross, Kelly, and Ron, thanks for the patience, and sometimes I wonder how you do it. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments real quick?
Real quick, I'm just gonna echo both of you on there, and I will thank this council. We've had other councils that started this project. Didn't quite get it to fruition. I will say we have an aggressive council that understands the importance of some of these projects, and it's much appreciated from, I think, from all residents.
Okay. All right, bylaw confirmatory. Yeah, I need a mover and a seconder, please.
Councillor Irvin.
Thank you, Counselor. Seconded by
Vandenberg.
Vandenberg. Thank you. All in favor of the confirmatory bylaw, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. I need a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Counselor Walden. Seconded by
Harris.
Counselor Harris. Okay, all those in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
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 Aye, thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. Have a good night, everyone, and Deputy Mayor, we'll see you in the morning at council.